Right,
I tried
boys.
five. Oh, gone. Right.
Thanks for joining me today. No, Jay, because he doesn't play real video games. So, for those who don't know, I've got two L's and a Ted joining us today. This is L. Is this your debut on the podcast?
Yeah, because you didn't publish the other episode that we did.
That's the Star Wars one, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not part of this podcast, but that's fine. And then we
Okay.
have Elle Foley, who is Elle's childhood friend, also called Elle, but now called Foley. How's it going?
All right. Thanks. All good. All good. Glad to be on the show.
Good, good, good. It's really weird, isn't it? Because we've been talking for 20 minutes and now we have to act like we haven't been talking for 20 minutes. It's fucking
We
weird,
talking
isn't
about?
it?
We haven't been talking. We talking about?
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
We haven't been talking.
on TV when they go up to someone's house and they open the door and go, "Oh, hello, oh so and so, oh funny you're here," like, "Oh yeah, welcome, come in," as if like they've just got to the house, but there's already a cameraman behind the door filming them as they come in.
Yeah.
Behind them, opening the door, and like, how the
Yeah,
fuck in?
Literally. And we've probably only got 20 minutes left on Zoom anyway in this session, but nonetheless. And last but not least, Ted, how's it going?
good, thanks, Nick.
Good,
I,
good.
I will admit, I played God of War at Christmas, so hopefully it was good enough for me to remember most of it.
Yes. Well, look, I recently finished Ragnarok, hence this recording. And as Ted said, I think to be honest with you, mate, I'm imagining once we dive in and get to it, a bit of that muscle memory and a bit more about the story might come back to you if it was good enough to remember, perhaps. But I'm sure it will come back to you as we talk about it. El, you played it when it came out as well, didn't you? By the way, Foley, I'll call you Foley just to let you know, just to make it clear.
Yeah. Sound.
You played it when it came out, didn't you, El?
Yeah, I had to watch a story recap video before this meeting as well, just to remember.
Fucking hell. Jesus. Fair play for doing the research.
I knew. Yeah, well, I just thought I need to watch something just to be like, yeah, that definitely happened. Yeah, that definitely happened. Oh yeah, I sort of forgot that actually happened. But yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. So, look, for those who don't know, obviously, certain games, certain times, certain events, we'll do a little special, we call it. So, basically, a whole episode about that game or the event, whatever it might be. Obviously, in this case, it's Ragnarok. I don't really give a shit. It's like 8, 9 months after it came out. I played it now, and that's why we're recording it now. And frankly, I think if we all want to talk about it as much as we do, I know I want to talk about it, then it'll stand up for itself. So whatever, it doesn't matter to me. One thing I want to do before we really get into spoilers is just give those people who are listening an opportunity to get your opinions on the game. And oh, man, there's just so much to discuss. I don't know where to start. I think there's going to be a lot of comparisons to God of War 2018 in this discussion, and I think there will be some differing opinions here, which is great, right? But I've looked at some reviews online that have basically sort of argued that we shouldn't necessarily compare this to 2018 because it's the second part of a saga, it's the ending to a story, something like that. Now, I think there's an argument against that argument, but I don't want to dive into it here. All I'm going to ask you guys, if it's all right, is just to give your memory, at least, of what your general thoughts were coming away after finishing Ragnarok. So you don't have to give me 20 minutes on detailed thoughts, a snapshot on your overall, what your gut feel was after you finished it, basically. We'll dive. I've got a little agenda here for us all. Just some key points to go through. We don't have to keep it that structured, but it's just in case we get a bit lost and there's some things that I definitely want to talk about. So that's it, really. So let's start with you, Ted. So your main thoughts after finishing Ragnarok. What were your main thoughts? And if we can keep it spoiler free, that'd be great. And then we can dive in afterwards.
Thought it was masterfully written and very well produced, very polished. probably the prime example of what a video game should be, which alas a lot are not. I don't know if it resonated with me the same as the first one did, whether that's just because it was the first one and this was the second, so you kind of already knew what to expect. But I'd arguably say it is one of the best games ever made overall, not just the story or the voice acting or the sequences, but also the graphics as well. Certain parts of the game, well, particularly I can't remember which world it is, but the where Freya and
Vanaheim.
Vanaheim, yeah. So parts of Vanaheim looked almost lifelike, the water and reflections and whatnot, I remember. So, yeah, in a nutshell, a generation-defining game, perhaps, and probably the precedent for other future single-player, story-driven games going forward.
Sick. I forgot to say as well, Ted is also a childhood friend of Al. Sorry, Ted. Foley,
Yeah.
give us your thoughts.
I mean, pretty much the same, really. I enjoyed it more than 2018. I don't know if that's controversial, but I did struggle to get into it a little bit and for the first third of the game. But once I got past that first third, I couldn't put it down. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. I think same comments as Ted. Really, really well written. Graphics were incredible. A really good, well-rounded game in all aspects. Some story, quests, just the world themselves. So left me thinking at the end of the game, I want another one. I'm ready for another one. Not yet, but give it a couple of years, I'll be ready for another God of War. Yeah. Awesome. So yeah.
Cool. All right. And Al, I think, well, we are obviously brothers, so I think we'll be fairly aligned because we usually are with these things. But give us your take, your honest take on how you felt after you finished it.
It's hard to be honest because after watching the recap video, I feel differently about it.
So how did you feel before the recap? So you obviously watched the recap for this. What did you feel like before the recap and after watching it?
I thought initially when I played it, I thought graphically, like everyone said, it's amazing. It's up there. The characters, the animation, everything was perfect. I think there was maybe a little bit too many new characters in some instances, but still very good. I did like the story. I think it was the way it played out was different and not necessarily a great different. And I think too much happened, and it was a good game, but I prefer the 2018 God of War experience than this Ragnarok.
So what changed after you watched the recap video? Then did you
after watching the recap, I realized how much actually happened.
Oh, okay, sure.
And just because a lot happened doesn't mean that it was a good game. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad I got to see all 9 realms and all these elements that we'll talk about probably. But I just felt like, wow, we went through a lot in that second game compared to that first one. For actually, not for a great finale either, if I'm honest.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So I'll finish with my thoughts, and then those listening who haven't played Ragnarok, who want to play it and experience it for themselves, please feel free. I'll try and keep it as broad as possible. But and look, boys, I know I'm fresh off the presses with this, but I'm more aligned with L on this one in that it's so difficult, isn't it? It's definitely the game you want to buy and play from our perspective, right? Growing up with the PS2, PS3, whatever, this is exactly the sort of game, unless you guys disagree, that we want to fucking play. a single player 30 to 40 hour incredible experience with memorable moments, many memorable moments, and actually I would argue more in the side quest than the main story, but we'll get onto it. And I think that, acting phenomenal, graphics unbelievable. And yet I'd be genuinely lying to you all if I didn't say that I felt disappointed when the credits rolled. And I don't mean that from any of the stuff I've talked about there, but from a story perspective. And I think story, for me at least, has become more and more important for games only because they're getting so good. In a way, I almost played through Last of Us Part 2 to experience the story, not to play the game because it's that fucking good. But I know it's a game. I get that. But that's just my experiences. So I do think that rolling credits, I was genuinely a little bit disappointed. And I think that's because of the build-up and the experience of 2018. And I remember us all talking about theories about this game and the way the story could play out and the way the characters could develop and what might happen. And I think that in all of that discussion and build up, I don't really feel like they maybe delivered what I was looking for from a story perspective, even though all those amazing things we talked about. So maybe I'm just becoming a spoiled brat, and if it's not a 12 out of 10, I don't like it. I don't know. We can debate it, but yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at. So definitely play it. If you're a fan of single player games, definitely play it. I genuinely, if someone said, Nick, did you like it more than 2018, or did you enjoy it more, or did you like the ending? No, I didn't, to be honest, but that's just me. So let's go straight in spoilers. So for those who don't want it, cut off, go away, leave now. Giving you plenty of notice. We've given you plenty of notice. There's a lot of things to talk about in this game, boys. I'm tempted to actually start at the ending, frankly. But I'll take your feedback on where you guys want to start, because there's just so much to dive into, isn't there, really? I think we should stick with story to begin with. So we don't talk about gameplay. We don't talk about maybe graphics as much and music and all the rest of it. Maybe we should just stick with story for now. What I want to know from you guys is... let's start with the ending, because me and Al didn't really appreciate the ending as much as maybe we hoped for. Fucking hell, I don't even know where to start. Jesus Christ.
Please. The thing you also have to remember is that the game is all based, not exactly, but it's largely based on real Norse mythology. And if you read the actual stories, so I've read Norse mythology by Neil Gaiman, and he just kind of retells old Norse tales in his own kind of way, and it all largely happened as it should have happened to a degree. So Thor is supposed to die, Odin's supposed to die, all the gods are supposed to die, apart from, ironically, Balder, who in proper Norse mythology is resurrected from hell and starts a new world. And Balder in the books in actual Norse mythology is a really nice god and everyone loves him, whereas in the game he's a bit of a douchebag. So part of the story really is actually reflected in proper Norse stuff. So if they'd have rewritten it too much, you could argue, well, you're not following Norse mythology at all. So it'd be interesting to know what you guys found disappointing about the ending. Because to be honest, in terms of the story, I don't think I'd have changed much at all, really. If anything, it was more of a disappointment that Kratos survived. Because I'd have preferred Kratos to perhaps have died and then have been some consequence to it. And you'd have felt sort of really disappointed and a bit heartbroken almost, maybe.
Do you mind if... Oh, God, sorry.
Because Kratos and Loki both walk out of it, like all action films where they get beaten up and explosion, they just walk out and they're fine. It kind of felt a bit like, oh, well, there wasn't really that much. It felt like the rest of the game didn't have so much significance to me, anyway.
Yeah.
El, do you mind if I go first? Just because I'm dying to get this information out of my head, but it's your call.
Yeah, no, the thing is, I agree with Ted there. I think it's just the end battle that I was expecting more. That's all I'm going to say on that. I'm not saying how the ending played out. I'm just saying when we got to Ragnarok, I was expecting a bigger battle. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
So say what you got to say, Nick.
So I can appreciate there's going to be specifics in this, Ted. There, you're going to be like, well, I don't remember that, Nick, probably. But the way it paced out, I thought was very strange. So, like, it's almost like one of those things, right? Where if you were like, tell me the story of Ragnarok. Okay. So Ragnarok's here. Thor and Odin visit Kratos and Atreus. They then hold on. They then sort of they find a tear. We'll talk about that later, obviously. Then Atreus gets angry because he thinks Odin can teach him stuff. So he goes to Asgard. He then decides he doesn't want to be there. Then they go and try and recruit more people to fight Odin, but not fight Odin because they're fulfilling fate. But they don't want to fulfill fate, but they can't help it because of their nature. Then there's a lot of stuff about nature and fighting fate. And then we find out, obviously, Odin tricked her all along, as it were, in a kind of Loki manner, ironically. And then they go and kill Thor and Odin. And like, don't get me wrong, I know I'm simplifying that way too fucking much. I appreciate that. But like it was I think the bits that were disappointing in the ending, as Al said, was more the execution, I'd say. In that for me, the twist of Odin being Tyr, I was like, this is what it's about, people. Moments like that, I'm like, give it to me. Moments where Atreus and Kratos reunite and Atreus finally appreciates, how much his dad loves him and protects him and all the rest of it. Those moments are fantastic. But I think that, to your point, Ted, about Norse mythology, I was actually hoping they put more of a twist on it, if I'm honest with you. And because the whole game's about fate and fighting fate, I missed a trick there. Well, I told Al about. I missed a trick there where I didn't really understand, like, what was happening in terms of the whole thing is that Kratos is going to die, right? That's kind of the game setup. The game setup is the Giants have already predicted this. They've got everything right so far. They knew 9/11 was going to happen. They've predicted everything. Kratos is going to die. And then Kratos doesn't die. And actually, in the end scene, there's a sort of shot with Atreus, with Odin in Atreus' arms after they've killed him, a bit like how the Giants foresaw Kratos dying in Atreus' arms on the wall in the is it Giant Wood? And that didn't happen. And it was a bit like, I'm not really sure why it didn't happen. It was only until I analysed it afterwards and looked at some YouTube videos that I think I understand what they were going with there. But there was points in the pacing where I thought, I don't know where this is going. And there was so many different trails going on, as Elle said, and so many different characters that I think they balanced the characters okay. And I get they're building to a big battle at the end. But I think there was too many trails that didn't go anywhere. So I'll give you an example. The mask and the portal, I get that there were supposed to be answers behind it, right? And Loki decides that, well, I don't need those answers. I choose to be Atreus. I kind of get that metaphor. But on the other hand, I'm thinking, what the fuck? What? Where's the mask come from? Where's the portal come from? How? What? What? Did the Giants make it? And again, I think we can appreciate that all this context might be because there's a third secret game. So I, respect if that's the case. Loki being called Loki, I'm not entirely sure we got the final conclusion to that, really, in terms of, we see him learning to lie in this game. And you're like, fucking hell, he's really manipulating people here. Like, is he actually a manipulator? Does he care about anyone? But I don't feel like we really got a conclusion to that and his legacy with the Giants. I think there's also a bit with, his animal transformations being a part of his power. I know we see it a lot and I know that it plays a part, but again, I don't, I wanted a bit more there, I think. And I think ultimately, it's with Thor's arc, seeing him die, even by Odin's hand, was shocking. But I was a bit like, they've done an incredible job here of making us feel empathetic and sympathetic for Thor, despite everything we learned about him in 2018, which is an amazing feat. And actually, his arc would have been amazing if you instead of dropping the hammer, you just see him swing it and he kills Odin. And maybe some people would have been disappointed that we never fight Odin, but I thought that would have been fucking amazing. Oh, we're running out of time. But I know I'm yabbering on here. But to answer your question, Ted, in terms of the ending, I think, like Elle says, I wasn't necessarily disappointed that we fought Thor and we fought Odin, but there's bits of the music, even in the last battle, where it's going bad. When I don't know if you remember when the gates are getting destroyed and closed, and you're like, fucking hell, this isn't going to go the way we think it's going to go, and then it kind of does. And then I think you also, I'm sure you guys agree that I was convinced that time is going to play a part in this fucking game, and it didn't at all. I was convinced that, we're going to lose this battle. It's going to go 40 years in the future. Atreus is going to be Odin's apprentice, and then we turn it all back and we save Kratos or whatever.
Avengers.
Endgame.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm probably saying too many points here, so I'll stop now. But I hope that kind of gives you something to think and respond to, Ted. And Foley, if you like.
I don't think I thought that deeply into it, really. I was kind of following what I knew would happen largely with the Norse stories, and was like, when Heimdall blows his horn, that is the beginning of Ragnarok, and when he dies and whatever.
Sure.
And I quite liked the way they creatively changed, because in the actual stories, Loki has his children with a giant, which is Hel, which is the sort of ghoulish, weird girl that they then send to the underworld, and she becomes goddess of the underworld. And then there's, of course, the world serpent, Jormungandr, and then Fenrir the wolf. So Fenrir the wolf was his original wolf, and he kept the soul inside, or spirit inside, that marble, didn't he? Whatever it was.
I think it was the dagger. The dagger.
Dagger, that's it. And then he implants it
into
the giant wolf. So I thought that was quite clever, because in just Norse stuff, the wolf is just a cub, and it just grows and grows and grows and grows and gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So that was quite clever. And then the way the world serpent becomes the world serpent, it's the snake in Ironwood, in Jotunheim, and then he uses the giant soul, doesn't he, which is in that marble thing, and then puts it in the snake. And I said to Elle at the time, I was like, I bet that's the world serpent, because he's just put a giant soul in a snake. And of course, it does become the world serpent, doesn't it? Because it grows. Because the other thing, isn't it? Doesn't Thor hit the world serpent? No, the world serpent magically appears, doesn't it? Out of nowhere.
So I think I can't remember her name. The other giant, the girl, she brings it through, because Fenrir can open portals. She brings that snake through the portal from Ironwood, and then fights Thor, I believe.
And then doesn't Thor hit it really hard, and then it disappears and goes back in time or whatever.
Elle, you got to say something about that, because.
What do you mean?
It's like one of the biggest moments of both games, and it just fucking happens. And then we get Mimir telling us about it after you finish it. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? That's the payoff we get for that. It
just happens. It just happens at the side of the screen, and you're like, oh, and they vanish, and you're like,
guess that's that.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah. So it's a bit like, that's quite a pivotal moment in Norse mythology, and it just happened in the middle of Ragnarok. There's a 2-second clip, and I was a bit like, it's a bit disappointing. It has to happen.
Yeah. Did you not think so, Ted? Were you not? I guess you found it cool, I guess.
To be honest, I can't remember how long it lasted or what happened. I played it so long ago, but
fair enough.
But then again, how long would it take to hit a giant snake really hard and send it back through time? I mean, it would happen pretty quick, wouldn't
it? Yeah.
True.
It was just such a tease when we meet the snake as and Atreus as a boy, and he's like, "Oh, you look familiar." Do you know what I mean? I just thought it was a tease to something bigger. That's all.
Yeah.
I suppose in some ways it was after the first game, everyone was convinced that there was going to be differences in time between the realms, and that's why all the giants were dead at the end of the game, and that had something to do with Ragnarok, and that we're going to use time travel and all this. So maybe that's why there's some slight disappointment that it didn't play out like that, and it happened almost as exactly as you would have expected, really, in a
Yep.
boring way, I suppose.
And I think that's what me and Elf felt as well. Go on, Foley. Go on, chime in.
What? Oh,
I
I
thought
wasn't.
you wanted to chime in.
No,
I thought sorry.
no, I wasn't. No, I will chime in. Actually, no. Thinking about it, I think the game played out exactly how I thought it was going to play out.
Isn't that disappointing?
That,
Though?
Yeah, which I
a little
guess is
bit, but yeah. I think a little bit, but that's,
When you say played,
I expected it.
do you mean that you knew you'd have to kill Odin?
Yeah, I knew. I mean, as soon as you saw Odin and Thor, I thought it would be either a big battle between one of those two, and I knew you'd walk away from it. I didn't think there'd be any point where you would die, or Atreus would pass away, or anybody else, anyone really that major that you'd get that upset about. I thought it played out just the way I thought it was going to.
What about Brock?
Oh, I forgot about that, but yes, that's correct. That's a shame, obviously, but and he was a great character, but obviously they want to make money, don't they? So they're going to make God of War 3. They don't want to kill Kratos off just yet. The story isn't interesting enough. Atreus is not interesting enough to carry that if Kratos were to die.
I think
the Atreus missions are some of the worst parts of it, in my opinion.
Oh wow! See, I thought the trips to Asgard, Foley, I thought they weren't maybe as exciting, but I thought seeing the perspective of the Asgardians was fantastic because we got a bit more sympathy for. I told Elle, you look, Owen comes across as such a nice guy in this game until like pretty much the very end. So I think that's quite clever.
Well, it's just you can see through that. Really, it's all just manipulation, isn't it? He's just trying to manipulate Atreus into doing, guide him in the right way to doing what he wants him to do and find those pieces of the mask and all that. But as I said before, it played out exactly how I thought it was going to play out. You kill bad guy at the end and you win, and everyone's all right. They've got to make. I said they're going to make a third one, aren't they? Clearly, so.
Do we think? Go on, please.
I don't think they will make a third one.
No, okay.
Well, if they do, it'll just be Atreus, won't it? And it'll be Atreus perhaps going to another land somewhere. Perhaps.
Yeah. But all the giants.
Well, as Foley said, with the best will in the world, I can't see Atreus leading a game, and I think that Kratos' character arc in this game is more powerful than Atreus's, even though you could argue Atreus is the main character in the fucking game. Ted, do you think that they didn't kill Kratos just for this reason, ultimately, for a future potential game, or?
Well, I mean, what else is there to do? I mean, him and Freya potentially might, get married or something and start a new lineage and a new legacy, but the Norse story's over. All the Norse gods are gone. What else is there to do other than they move to Japan and start pissing off all the gods there and kill all of those gods? Or they go to Egypt and kill all the Egyptian gods, because that's the theme. It's all the God of War games. He kills all the gods, so he's taking down the Greek pantheon, killed all those gods, and he's taken out the Norse gods. It's like the God Rampage tour, really, isn't it? Kratos' Rampage tour of just destroying gods.
Everything.
Yeah.
Kratos is on a world tour of destruction. But actually, because of the events of this, he's almost turned over a leaf. So I know he killed Heimdall, and he didn't really want to do it. He tried to prevent himself from doing it, but that he didn't kill Thor. That was like his turning point. So I know that's sort of his character arc, but it's almost like even that arc is over now.
Yeah, so exactly. So where would they make a third game? You know,
Exactly.
yeah.
It's like there's no third game. Players can't carry it. I'm sure it'd be interesting to find out what happened, but I don't think we're ever going to find out. And I think that's it, if I'm honest.
If that's true, then yeah, I think there's some marks here that like I think it's great that Kratos finishes hit. Actually, to be honest with you, I think Kratos has the best character arc in the whole game. I know he's the main character, so to speak, but I genuinely think he has the best arc in that he by the end of the game you actually want to hang out with him. He's not a complete dickhead, you know. And I'm being dramatic about that, but at the end of the first game, he becomes tolerable, a tolerable father. And at the end of this game, he becomes like a genuine, dare I say, human being, right? In his interactions and his care for people, those around him. And they obviously talk about how the Giants foresee him as not Kratos the destroyer, but Kratos the rebuilder. But he's going to rebuild, help rebuild the realms. And it's like, that's a fantastic character arc. But yeah, like, I'm not even sure. Okay, Atreus goes to find some more giants, but even that, I'm like, we got hints that Odin and Thor hated the giants, but we never really knew why. We never really found out why Thor loved killing giants, and again, we never really found out where Loki's name originated from, really, and why he's called that, and to some extent. So, if it's the case that there is only 2 games, I'm genuinely a little bit like, oh, really? Do you know what I mean?
Well,
I wanted a complete like, mwah.
Well, I think, but that's for you to go and explore yourself and go read the stories and do some kind of digging, I suppose.
Well, Ted,
Okay.
I've listened to Neil
Because-
Gaiman. Actually, I'll have you know.
Because you know the point of the game isn't to explain the whole lineage of Norse mythology, I guess, of why certain people don't like certain people, why certain characters have certain relationships, I guess. And
I think that's
perhaps it's not
fair.
but it's not really that relevant to the story either. I mean, the reason they don't like the giants is because the giants are far more intelligent than the Aesir. Really, the giants had better technology and they had their magic as well. Don't the giants have a certain types of magic? Well, and the other thing as well is that Odin's obsessed with knowledge, isn't he?
Right.
So Odin hangs himself from a tree to get
Knowledge on the world tree.
and then he then gouges out his own eye and puts it into Mimir's well to be all seeing, the All Father, whatever. And he hates the fact that the giants can have the power of foresight and he doesn't, because he's obviously he's obsessed, isn't he, with why they exist or why the world is what it is, which is why he wants to use the mask at the end. So that's part of the reason why they dislike the giants.
No, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I get your point, Ted. I guess in contrast to that, though, even though there were elements that weren't explained, I felt like 2018 was a bit more of a complete story, at least with those characters. And I know there was less characters, but that's how I felt about it.
Well, I think the end of 2018 as well left intrigue, didn't it, as to what was going to happen
True.
next, because
True.
because throughout the whole game there's a mystery as to who Odin is and who Thor is and what they look like, because you only ever hear stories from Mimir, so it leaves this element of mystery and suspense throughout the whole game, and you kind of wonder, why is the world like this and why are they so nasty, and what they sound so terrible, and you want to know what they look like and why, what happened to the giants, what happened to Tyr, why did he disappear, and all these questions are left. In a weird way, I'd liken it to almost the Star Wars The Force Awakens. Everyone after that film was really excited about the next film and really enjoyed that film because it left so many questions, and you were left at the end burning like, oh, who are these characters? Why is it, why are they the way they are, and what's going to happen next? So I think it's also an element of nostalgia. Even I know it's only 2018; it wasn't that long ago, but I think there's an element of that as well comes into play. But the first game leaves lots of questions, whereas the second game you find all the answers, so it's not as interesting, perhaps.
There's no questions now, is there?
Well, I think there's a few, but I get what you mean, Foley. I get what you mean. Foley, did you? I guess to go to somewhere else because I can I can see I can see that we have to agree to disagree. Foley, you mentioned the first third of the game. I think it'd be criminal if we didn't all talk about the fact that the first 10 hours of this game is fucking unbearable. Are you kidding me? The first bit, the first hour with the battle with Thor and Freya and the bear is fucking incredible. And then we go into the mines for about 6 fucking hours and it is unbearable. Talk about not having answers. I mean, I felt like I didn't have answers for 30 hours of this game. But anyway, Foley, please tell us about your experience with that because I think it was awful personally.
I mean, I'm not there. I don't start games too quick anyway in general. So I remember saying to these two, I struggled with it initially. Again, once I got past, funny enough, once I got past the mine bit and we'd found Tyr, that's when I started. I thought, well, the game's actually getting a bit interesting now. Things are actually starting to pick up and you start exploring other realms. I think you visit, oh God, you have to forgive me. I think it's Vanaheim you visit next, straight after that, potentially. I can't remember. But, things start to get really interesting at that point. But you are right, it's a bit of a slog getting through there. Once you get out of it, things started to pick up. But I said I struggled with the first game for the first 10 hours. I struggle with a lot of games for the first 5 or 10 hours and feel like until I really find myself sort of enjoying it and getting into the story and getting into the characters. Believe it or not, I struggled to start first 10 hours in The Witcher 3, and then once I got into it, I couldn't put the game down. So maybe that's just me, but it's definitely the same in Ragnarok. It was as you say, as soon as you got out of the mines, it started to get a bit interesting at that point. But
to be fair, me and Elle have said it many a time. I think until out in the first game, I think until you reach Alfheim, there is a bit of a slog there. So I won't deny that. What is
the sorry, Nick? What is the realm after? I can't remember what the realm is after the
after Tyr, Svartalheim. So you rescue. I'm pretty sure you rescue Tyr in Svartalheim. Right. Wait. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you go to Svartalheim.
It is Svartalheim itself, isn't it? The mines.
Yeah,
that's right.
And then after that, I don't know I want to say Vanaheim.
You go for Vanaheim, don't you? After that,
pretty sure. I thought so.
Oh, sorry, Al, it's not kicking in. What are you saying?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you go to Alfenheim, which is where the elves are, to see the light.
Yes. Right, that's it. Yeah.
And then you go.
I remember you telling me don't get sidetracked and do any side quests just yet, and I did exactly that. So,
speaking of answering questions, what do we all think about the look of Thor and Odin specifically, and Heimdall, I suppose? But Thor and Odin, what did you think about their look?
I felt like, again, initially, if you look at popular culture, you've only obviously got Chris Hemsworth to go off. Like Ted's told me, it's a lot more like Norse mythology, so I can appreciate that. Odin, again, I wasn't expecting any different to what he looks like. He looks a lot more like the voice actor who's the guy from Jurassic Park 2. And I think the look of them, fine. Tyr, Heimdall, all of them. Everyone else looks incredible. Freya, for the your wife, I think her name's Freya as well. I can't remember.
Faye,
that's it. Faye. All the new characters we saw, the mermaid that creates that spear, the hags under the ocean, everything. Every character looked amazing. There's no denying that. But Odin's voice initially was a bit. I wasn't sucked into it straight away. I was a bit like, I don't know if that suits what I think Odin should sound like. But it grew on me after a while. But yeah.
Yeah, because Balder and Thor have this they call it a transatlantic accent, which I think the actors put on, but I think it's amazing. But like you say, and then Richard Schiff comes in, the actor. It's just like, oh, that's Toby from The West Wing. Okay. Looks like Toby from The West Wing. But anyway, guys, what did you think about the look of Thor and Odin?
I thought Thor was spot on, really, with how Thor should be, because Thor always was kind of like a fat, overweight, drunk thick, stupid god who was only really useful with his hammer. He was just the god's muscle. So I thought Thor looked great. Odin, I thought was a bit weird with the short hair and the New York kind of accent. Just didn't fit the game very much. And I thought Odin would look a bit more like Gandalf or Dumbledore or someone with kind of like a
bigger beard,
big beard or like longer hair or something.
Yeah, great big.
You what, El?
Great big bushy beard.
Yeah, Foley.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ted. Sorry.
But I don't know. I suppose in hindsight, maybe because he was quite sharp-witted and all-knowing, maybe having the shorter hair and whatever, and the kind of snappy voice makes sense. But his voice just doesn't seem to fit the rest of the characters in the game, probably.
Agreed.
Everyone else is fairly neutral or Nordic sounding, and then you get this kind of New Yorker come along, It's just a bit weird.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, I liked Thor. I thought Thor was really good. But when I was expecting to see Odin, I didn't expect to see that, so that was very surprising when they first revealed Odin anyway. Back in Midgard, you first get him revealed. I was about like, "Oh, that's Odin." But yeah, I agree with Ted. His character, his voice doesn't really fit the rest of it, but his character was clever. I think it was good to make him as witty and as intelligent and manipulative as he is, or as he was. So I like that bit about it, but I thought Thor was spot on as well.
Yeah, I agree actually. Like you guys, as soon as Odin walked through the door, I said to Elle, I was like, as soon as he walked through the door, because we're obviously curious, right? We're curious about the design of these characters.
Oh yeah, of course.
And their spin on them. And I was like, oh fuck, I was not expecting that. For good and bad, maybe. And I think that first scene, the accent throws me off, but after that, I think I got used to it. But what I will say about Thor and Balder is that I genuinely think those two characters are probably my favorites in both games, apart from Kratos maybe, because I've got this thing where like every few years I'll probably go on YouTube and look up all the cutscenes of Balder. And then I'll probably do the same with Thor in the next few years, just because I think that performance is unbelievable. And I know everyone's performance here is unreal. Chris Judge specifically for Kratos is next level, but I don't think there's enough Thor. I mean, do you guys agree that? I mean, Al said, like, do you guys agree that? All right, fair enough, Foley. You say Atreus' bit where you play as him is weak for you. But going around with Thor in these realms, was that not fucking sick for you guys? Or I thought it was sick.
Yeah. I thought it was a good fight.
Ted?
Yeah. I mean, from memory, it was quite cool going around with him, kind of getting to know a bit more about him, I suppose.
Sorry.
All the time and sort of depressed, isn't he? Really?
Right.
But
he's an alcoholic. He's an alcoholic. Like that's his story.
Yeah, but he's Odin in a way wants him to be an alcoholic because he
control.
To control him and manipulate him and just say, "Go out and do this for me." You're pathetic and worthless. Who are you? And that's his arc, isn't it? I suppose he comes round it by the end, doesn't he? He stands up for himself.
Absolutely. Sorry, Foley, were you gonna say something?
I wasn't. No, I was agreeing. That's it.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I love Thor and Balder, both of them, so much. And obviously we have that comparison, right, of the first fight in each game or first boss fight or whatever is the two brothers, Balder and Thor. I think obviously the bit with the axe and the hammer meet and the frozen lightning sick, as well. In regards to Atreus, did we all pretty much thought we were going to play as him for this game? Because that was a massive reveal for me. Because obviously I hadn't got any spoilers. So when the camera turns and I'm like, fuck. What did you guys think? I don't know who wants to go first, but
Is it all right?
Yeah, crack on, Foley. Go on.
No, it was all right. I think, again, I said I thought he was my least favorite parts of the game. I felt like I knew we were going to play as him eventually, or at least get a couple of goes at him. And but the fact you actually got a proper good on, actual combat system with Atreus. I didn't mind those aspects, but his combat was good. But I just didn't like I don't know, his. And I don't know why I'm saying that, because his parts of this, when you played as him, were actually some of the most parts where they actually really developed the story and moved it forward. Some of those bits he was doing with Odin, and then him and Thor kind of almost teaming up. Muspelheim, I believe it is. The lava realm. That was like some of those moments are the bits where as his Thor's daughter, they actually really progressed the story. But I think I was just being a bit picky at the time, perhaps. But I think I just preferred the Kratos combat, the Kratos part of it. But that's my take anyway. Of course.
I preferred Atreus. I preferred his combat because it was more flexible and agile, and some of his moves were really quite powerful. And the bow was quite a fun weapon to use. But I think with most single player games that I play, when you have to play as another character other than the main character, I'm just frustrated anyway. No, it's not even a thing exclusive to this game. I think in any game that I've played where you then do a mission as a side character or someone else, you kind of want that level to be over because you want to go back to the main character again. So, which I felt slightly with some of Atreus's levels. You just want to go back to Kratos because Kratos is the main guy, and he overall is the better character to play as, and he's the main protagonist. So you feel like playing a side mission to me is, well, not a side mission, but an Atreus level is almost just like a distraction from what you want to really be doing. But then, as you say, some of his levels did actually progress the story far more than anything you'd have been doing with Kratos. And I thought the Ironwood level with the giant girl, Angraboda, who actually in the Norse stories is the giant who gives birth to the world serpent and everything like that. But obviously they write it in a slightly less grotesque way in this game.
Do we want child porn? No.
I thought graphically that particular sequence was exceptional. That stuck in my mind. I vaguely remember what you do there, but I do remember graphically thinking at the time, this is like fantastic.
Yeah, Ironwood is graphically impressive. I just felt it went on a little bit too long than it should have. But I thought I'm definitely going to play as Atreus. I didn't think I'd play it as much as we did, which isn't a terrible thing. Like Ted says, sometimes when you go off to a side character, you're a bit like, okay, let's see what this guy can do or whatever. But I tell you what, I did actually prefer sometimes. I preferred playing as Kratos, but having Freya as my sidekick rather than Atreus. She was stronger in some ways, I felt.
Yeah, I think
so. I preferred it when it was me and Freya.
I think that's fair, to be fair, Al. Did you guys expect, or Al, did you expect her to become a sidekick? Like, did you know where she was going to go? No.
Well, I thought, obviously, as the end of 2018, she hates you. And even in the opening scene for Ragnarok, you're like, she's still pissed, obviously. And you obviously, you thought there's got to be, you're both aiming for the same outcome. You both sort of want Odin dead. So it's a bit like, shut up, woman. Come join me in this fight. And I thought it's going to happen, but to be having Freya alongside you was pretty fun. I felt. But yeah, some of Atreus' bits were long and stuff like that. So yeah,
I did think Freya would only be a temporary thing for like one level. I didn't expect her to be a permanent sidekick who would have her own skill tree and everything. So that took me by
Oh
surprise,
yeah,
kind of pleasantly.
yeah. I forgot about the skill tree. Actually. That was a good aspect.
Ted, do you think that's where game mechanics sort of allude to story more than they should? In that, if there wasn't a skill tree, you might think she is only temporary. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but as I played the game, when you first go to is it Alfheim when you first play with her?
I think so.
I think it's
Yeah. Is it Niffle?
Vanaheim. Sorry, Vanaheim, where her realm, basically.
yeah.
When I first did that level with her, I thought, oh, she's just going to play with me for this level because Atreus is off doing whatever he's doing, and then Atreus will come back, and then it'll go back to normal again. So, once her skill tree came up, you could change her armor, and even at that point, I wasn't convinced that she'd be a major character. Still, I still thought, oh, this is still just a temporary thing. I don't need to worry about investing much in Freya's abilities. But as only as I played the game more, and then realized, oh, she really is sticking around. She's supposed to. The skill tree isn't there just for the odd occasion. She's kind of replaced Atreus entirely. And because I played it so long ago, I can't remember exactly how long you play after that point, how much time you do or don't spend with Atreus. But I don't think it's that much time, is it? Particularly.
Also, it's like 50-50. It felt like that when I played it.
Yeah, I think towards the end of the game it is. But what I will say is that every time you're with Atreus towards the end of the game's basically like, you sure you don't want to do any quests? Might be the last. You sure? You sure you don't want to spend time together? So I think it alludes to the fact that you definitely spend a lot of time with Freya, basically. And I think it also alludes heavily to the fact that you Atreus ain't going to be around one way or another by the end of the game, to be honest with you. That's the way I read it anyway.
In some ways, it's almost, I find Freya's arc. I'd have preferred Freya to have hated you throughout the whole game, and then for her to change at the end.
Okay.
And kind of come round by the end and then help you fight Odin. But because it's basically a quarter way through the game, you then set her free from the roots of the world tree, which imprisons her to Midgard. And then she forgives you. It's like, oh, well, we're friends again. Well, that's that done. Right. You kind of forget all about the hatred that she has at the end of the game and at the beginning of the game. And which is, I guess, plays into how the rest of the game rolls out because of the fact she helps you and she's part of, I guess, your arc as Kratos. But even so, it'd have been more interesting perhaps if she'd have hated you throughout the whole game, which is what I expected. I did expect her to turn around in the second game because I thought she hates Odin more than she hates Kratos. And she will eventually come around, but I didn't expect it to happen so soon and for you to then become like best buds.
Arguably lovers by the end of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair, Ted. I was a bit surprised myself, but I think it was paced quite well in that I personally don't think it was a kind of like you defeat, is it Yggdrasil? You defeat like, yeah. I actually felt that like it was quite well paced and well acted, so I didn't question it too much. But I do think that like you say, I think ultimately she realizes that Odin's to blame, not Kratos, I guess. And she's still a little bit questionable for a lot of the game. So I didn't necessarily, but like you say, I don't know. I just thought she was a goner by like hour 2 of the game. I didn't know where else she was going to go, I guess. But yeah, I was a bit surprised. Foley, what do you think about Freya? Do you like her? Do you love her? Do you hate her? Did you see it coming?
Good character. Good character. Again, I had the feeling that they would just all get resolved in it eventually. They in the first game they save her from dying. It was either her or Balder, I think, if I remember rightly. The choice was there.
Yeah.
Obviously, you don't make, you don't have a choice. It's obviously linear, but you save her from that, and then again you save her again. I think I knew eventually she was just going to warm up to it, and somebody, as Ted said, she hates Odin more. She hates Kratos, and for all we know, she's using him as a means to get to him. But now they've got to him, and the game ended the way it did. It's like, oh, actually, there is a, those two have actually sort of. There's now a relationship between them. Where they take it from there, if they do take it from there, I don't know. But I think overall she's a very good character arc. Interesting to go from the nice person in the first game, completely hating everybody and hating those guys and trying to kill them at all costs, to then just going back to the way she was. Didn't like her for leaving her turtle.
Oh yeah, shout out to George. What's his name? I can't remember his name.
I actually went back to that bit to find the flower. I think there's a flower out there, isn't there, for one of the trophies? If you're a Sado like me, and you platinumed it, you find the old turtle there, and you find him anyway, don't you, as part of the story? But you go back there as well, don't you? And I can't remember if she has an interaction with him or not, but leaving him out there was awful, wasn't it? He looked cold. So I have a little. I just pretend in my head he was hibernating and he wasn't affected by it. It just makes me feel better, makes me sleep a bit better. Knowing that, or thinking that at least.
He was alive, mate. He was all good. But
just a bit cold.
Atreus sets the fire up, doesn't he? Doesn't he light a fire and gives a bit of warmth?
What I was going to say, do you guys remember the site? So you remember the bit in Vanaheim where you escape, you're liberating Freya, Tyr's brother, from prison. Odin captured him, whatever, and you're on his floating boat, or Freya's floating boat, and then the I can't remember what they're called in the game, but the warrior. By the way, that guy's fucking cool. Are you kidding me? That guy's like my favorite character in the whole game. The guy with the massive sword, who's part of their encampment, one of the warriors. Don't know if you guys remember, but basically they're getting attacked by two drakes or whatever. He jumps off to save everyone, and they magically crash into each other. And then there's a side mission where you go and rescue him. Don't know if you remember this. And he actually ends up.
Is that?
Go on.
No, are you talking about the guy who was originally the boar that you shoot in the first game?
No.
Yes.
No.
There's him.
You're not.
No, stop. No, it's just but a similar character. Part of Frey's band of brothers.
Yeah, I remember there's a guardian that you normally actually have to fight through the game.
That's right. That's him.
Yeah. Okay, he's that. I thought. Okay. Yeah,
so he jumps off and he rescues you, and then there's a side quest to rescue him. And if you do that, he goes to the turtle house and he's in there like creating the fire and shit.
I didn't know.
Yeah, but just a quick point on that, guys. Did you I thought that was like a nice moment, and then I almost felt like rescuing him was a bit like you were saying earlier, Ted. Like, is anything gonna have consequences here? Like, is anyone gonna die?
Because you think he's died, and then you realise that he's survived an incredible fall and landed in the desert, and somehow survived. And you think, well, that whole scene has lost its significance slightly.
Yeah, I agree.
So I still think it'd have been more dramatic and whatnot if Kratos had have died at the end, perhaps, and then Atreus goes off to go and find the giants. But I don't know. But then I suppose ultimately you didn't want him to die, did you? Really, either it'd have been quite gut wrenching after all that story for him to just go, keel over at the end.
Perhaps, Ted, but like you say, maybe he could have finished everything and then, and then called it quits. You know what I mean?
Because I do find often in films and stories, it's always the ones that leave you frustrated at the end that I wish that character lived. They're the ones that stay with you slightly more than when everyone just kind of saves the day and it's like, oh, well, there was nothing to worry about because everyone survived and the bad guy's gone now. So, a bit like, I suppose, like, even I go back to Avengers again, but like Tony Stark, there was some consequence, wasn't there? Because Tony Stark, like the leader of the Avengers, whatever, sacrifices himself to save the universe.
Fucking spoiler! Fucking hell!
but kind of, okay, we won, but there was a cost. Whereas I feel in Ragnarok they won, but there wasn't much cost because all the main protagonists survive. I guess the only person you'd say is sad to lose is Brock.
Yeah.
but his brother's still there, so he can still sharpen your sword and your axe. So it's not an issue.
No, it's Brock's female dwarf mate. I don't know if you remember. She
Is it Lunda? Is it Lunda? In it, Lunda?
Yeah, that sounds right. And her and the dog, they end up manning the Smiths all over the game. But did you got that's a story. To be fair, to your point, Ted, right? I would argue the Sindri storyline or arc is the one that like there is no conclusion, but I'm okay with that because that's literally going to be it. He might be. I don't know if you guys remember, but Sindri is beyond angry with Kratos and Atreus. Like he will likely never forgive them. He even at his funeral, you know, that little bit sort of secret ending. He doesn't want to speak to Kratos, and I feel like that is a real fucking hell. This is almost like Freya, but who's never going to come back around. Do you know what I mean?
Why do they fall out again? Because I remember you go to get something to create the spear, don't you?
Yes.
And you go to the mermaid, and then she won't
speak to Brock. So basically, Sindri goes down into this well where you find this ring that they believe they can turn into a weapon to kill Heimdall, because obviously Heimdall can sense what's going to happen, right? So you fight. Obviously, there's all these rings or whatever, and Sindri gets this ring, and then Kratos and Brock go to this mermaid to do magical powers to create into this weapon so that you can kill Heimdall. And the mermaid should be able to speak to your soul, but because Brock has only got 3/4 of his soul, because Sindri wasn't able to get all of his parts of his soul back, Brock realizes that he
died.
He died, yeah. And then the reason Brock dies is because there's the big reveal, because Tyr says, oh, he can get into Asgard, and then everyone's questioning and being like, why didn't you tell us earlier? And it's like, shit, the jig's up, people. So Thor as Tyr, not Thor, sorry, Odin as Tyr kills Brock.
Of course, yeah.
Sindri is obviously upset with the situation because you're the one who has brought Tyr or who was actually Odin into his home, and if Sindri never helped you, I think that's the way he's looking at it. Like, if he never helped you, then his brother would still be around. Maybe.
Or was he angry that Brock found out about his soul as well?
Sindri is he doesn't care that Brock found out. Obviously, he never wanted him to find out. That wasn't the issue. It was the fact that you brought Tyr, aka Odin, into the home, and obviously Odin killed Brock to escape, and that's what my take on was. Obviously, Nic and Foley have played it more recently, but that's to my understanding. Just because he was let into the home, and it's a bit like, what have I can't believe this has happened, sort of thing, and this is your fault, guys, Atreus and Kratos. But that's what I took.
Yeah, I think on top of that, so Brock does forgive Sindri in his dying breath, basically. He says that I know what you did, but I forgive you. Sorry, Al, I don't know if you explained this already, but yeah, basically because he revived him without the 1/4 of his soul being the soul, he now can't go to oh no. What's
That's
heaven?
Oh, well, wherever
he can't go to heaven. He can't go to
Valhalla.
Thank you. He can't go to Valhalla. So and obviously at this point he knows he can't go to Valhalla. He's about to die, but he forgives Sindri anyway. And then Sindri's annoyed, yes, one because they brought Tyr into his home, but also he gave Kratos and Atreus like everything he had, right? He gave him the ring, he gave him his house, he gave him his skills, and they repaid him by his brother dying. So he basically blames them for that.
Right.
Yeah.
But what I find interesting, and I clocked onto this quite early on, and I'm amazed none of the dwarfs or the other gods ever realised. I don't quite understand it. But like Tyr, the real Tyr only ever had one hand. And even in the pictures in the first game, you can see Tyr only ever has one hand. So when they found Tyr and he has two hands, I was like, well, that's different from what I know, but I'm going to go along with it because this game is a spiritual remake of kind of like, what actually happened in Norse mythology. But clearly, now in hindsight, knowing that it was Odin, Tyr must have always would have had one hand when he went missing. So why did none of the dwarfs, who knew Tyr quite well, or Freya, who also knew Tyr, why did they not immediately go, hang on a
Mimir.
minute, two hands? Like that. So
When you find Tyr in the realm with the
Niflheim.
crows,
Yeah, Niflheim.
yeah,
Yeah.
obviously there's only like a 10-second interaction with him, but you obviously see the real Tyr. Does he have one hand or two hands there? Because I know what Ted's saying. I get that, because obviously if it's written there, like, then surely the difference would be. And even if the Tyr in the prison that you find has got one hand, that's absolutely a flaw there, right there. What the fuck?
I don't remember the first game ever showing that, Ted, but Foley, I don't know about you, but I don't remember him having one hand when you find him at the very end in Niflheim. Do you?
I don't remember. No, I don't remember him having only one hand.
I think he's got two hands, if I'm honest with you, Ted. So it just sounds like they went back on their photograph,
Yeah.
I suppose.
Well, I knew it wasn't Tyr from the beginning. I didn't, but
Did you? So you genuinely expected a twist there, then?
I didn't because I just thought, well, the game isn't making it exact to how it is anyway. So I just figured, well, they've given him two hands. They haven't bothered doing the whole one hand thing. But then I suppose it doesn't make sense anyway, because why he would have one hand in the game per se, because the reason he has one hand in the stories is because Fenrir the wolf bites his hand off, because gods read a prophecy that the wolf will fight against them in Ragnarok. So they get the dwarfs to build a special chain that will hold Fenrir the wolf down. They trick him by saying, "We bet you can't break this chain," kind of thing. And he says, "I don't trust this. I think you're going to trick me." So he says, if one of you holds your hand in my mouth, I'll put the chain on. But if I can't get out, I'm going to bite your hand off. So Tyr then volunteers himself and says, "Okay, I'll put my hand in your mouth," knowing that he's going to get his hand bitten off because the dwarfs have built this unbreakable chain. So alas, he can't get out of the chain and he bites Tyr's hand off. And then he says something like, I would have been on your side if you hadn't chained me up, but now I'm going to kill all of you. So it's almost like the classic cliche prophecy where you try to avert the prophecy, but you actually make it happen by trying to prevent it from happening, like Star Wars,
Yeah.
like the whole Darth Vader arc. Like, Padme's going to die. Okay, well, I'll become a Sith. Oh, that's what killed her,
Yeah, and we saw a bit of that, right, when Kratos kills Heimdall. But on that point, Ted, yeah, like they do that a bit in this game, don't they, with the whole prophecy thing? I think that's fair to say. But they do just end up doing the prophecy pretty much, right? If I'm not mistaken, apart from Kratos dying, I suppose.
Yeah, I can't remember how they avert it exactly.
So
they have to change, don't they?
Yeah. So basically, the story bit. Can you hear me? The story bit that I didn't understand is basically that through the flashbacks with Faye, Kratos has to, I quote, open his heart to the world in order to find purpose and meaning in it again, and that means that Kratos teaches Atreus that he was wrong. And I don't know if you guys remember, but it's at the bit where you're invading Asgard and you find out that Odin helped all the refugees from Midgard into Asgard so that basically they could be near the wall when they attack so that the attackers would feel bad about killing these Midgardians. And Atreus is standing there going like, fucking hell, we're going to kill everyone. And then he's like, no, don't worry about it. Close your heart. And then Kratos is like, I was wrong, Atreus. You need to open your heart to the suffering and you need to help these people. And in that moment, also, you realize that, well, essentially, Kratos doesn't kill Thor when he could, like he did with Heimdall. And that's the deciding factor. Thor redeems himself and we kill Odin. Is that, I think that's basically what happened. But
yeah.
I didn't piece together in that moment though that is what happened. I suppose, which frustrated me. To be honest, like playing the game, I was like, I didn't realize that was the deciding moment, if you will. I didn't realize that was
No.
what the game was saying or telling me, I suppose.
Yeah.
But speaking of flashbacks, Freddie, I'll start with you because you're obviously very you're a calm mannered man. Did you expect to see Faye? What are we thinking, boys? Like, did we expect to see Faye? Did we like the flashbacks? I want it all. Foley, I want your input.
I didn't. I didn't even think about Faye. I thought she's obviously died. Maybe you was, do you know what? I can't even think if we. I didn't think we would see her, but we were lucky enough to get a glimpse of what she actually looked like, and she looked pretty normal. We didn't see any of her in the first game, so it was all up to speculation as to what she looked like, and they finally obviously revealed it. But the flashback scenes themselves, they were quite nice. A little bit of more depth to Kratos' character, a little bit more depth to the story in general, and obviously you can clearly tell he cares very deeply for Atreus, and obviously really, really cared for and loved Faye. So, I mean, that's all part of Kratos' story, though, isn't it? And his love for her, and obviously Atreus is such a big part of it all. But that was really well done, I think, as well. And I think it was good to see a glimpse of her. Although if we never saw her, would it change much? Probably not. I think you'd still get that from the story that he still loved and cared about her. But
yeah,
I don't know what anyone else's take is, but
I thought I didn't think there. I might be wrong, but when I played it, I didn't think there were flashbacks. I thought there was some sort of weird spiritual interaction in which he was actually talking to her in the present time, but as like a spirit, and he was almost hallucinating it. Bit like
that's a good point. That's a good
like
point,
in
actually.
Harry Potter when Voldemort kills him the second time, and he's in King's Cross Station talking to Dumbledore, and he's like, "Is this real? Or is it in my head?" And he's like, "Of course it's in your head, but what does that not mean it's real?" That sort of thing. That's what I thought it was. I didn't think it was a flashback. I thought it was like she was talking to him and guiding him there and then, but I might be wrong.
I think it's a bit of both.
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah.
There's certain scenes where Faye's got Atreus as a baby when you're like on the when you're on the boat bit.
Yeah.
That's definitely back. But I feel like the initial one, the very first one, I could be wrong because I don't remember the exact scenes, but I thought that was like an interaction that actually has she lied about her death, or is she, like Ted said, is she spiritually there? Where we're imagining it, but is there some truth to it? Is there some actual interaction, or some sort of like that? But yeah, it's sort of, it was good. It was good to see, put a face to a name. Like Ferry said, would it have changed much? Maybe not, but I think it just showed a bit of like how human Kratos was before Atreus came along, or even when he was as a baby, sort of thing. It just gave more character to Kratos, I guess.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, to be fair, Ted, it's a good point because most of it plays out like a flashback, but there are moments where she puts his hand on his head, and and she's like, "Kratos, you haven't got time. Care for our son, protect our son." So obviously, when that happens, you're like, "Wait, is it a dream? What the fuck is going on?" So for sure, I get that. I think it was really nice and done really well, but I have to say, boys, that there is a part of me where I'm a bit like, she knows Kratos cutting down that log is gonna stir shit up, and that's what she wanted, right? That's what she wanted, and she wanted, I guess, Kratos to at least stir the pot a bit with the Aesir, and I think that that does, and throughout the game, Kratos is like, even though she's guiding him and helping them both, I'm sure spiritually, he is going like, yeah, you know what? Could be your mum. I don't fucking know anymore. Could be fucking Faye that battled Thor in a bit of Svartalheim, I think. Don't know. She didn't tell me much actually. Now that I think about it, so there was a little bit of maybe it gives her more depth and human, like, you know, a dark side. But she's definitely not a saint. Do you know what I mean? What did you guys think? Did you get any of that in terms of like when you were playing?
I thought it was cool that she had a bit of mystery behind her, and that she actually, she actually had a bit of a mystery. She actually had a fight before, and it was her axe, and
Yeah.
that was quite cool. She wasn't just someone that he met, and she was a giant or whatever. She actually had a bit going for her.
So I can't really recall some of that. I mean, I guess in the first game and the second game, you don't really know a huge amount about her, do you? Really, you just hear remarks from other characters about how great she was and how important she was. And I suppose in some ways her character, I mean, it was a digital character, wasn't it, based on a real actress? I don't know the actress's name, but I rewatched My Name is Earl recently. She was in My Name is Earl as an Amish girl, funny enough.
Really? Oh, that's
Yeah.
funny.
Which must have been the first time I saw her, because then she was in Daredevil as she plays Karen in Daredevil. Anyway,
Ben Affleck or TV show?
in the Netflix TV show, she plays a main character in it. But yeah, I thought it was nice to actually see her, I suppose, and to see those interactions between her and Kratos, and for real, I guess, and not just hear Kratos talking about your mother told me this, your mother told me that. Da, 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 da.
Yeah,
because most of the time he's a rampaging lunatic. And in the first 3 God of War games, he's a complete nutter. He's just screaming his head off constantly, really angry, killing everyone and everything. He rips Helios here, he rips his head off in the 3rd game with his bare hands. Then you carry his head round on your belt for the rest of the game and use his eyes as a anyway. So, and then when he kills Hermes, he cuts his legs off. Oh, anyway, so it's gone from this like complete psychopath to being this kind of cool-headed like old dude who just wants to live in a log cabin with his wife and look after his son. So seeing those interactions between him and Faye, where he's even then you could say he's had an arc, because he's gone from being this really angry guy in Greece to now being this quite mellow, sort of old, tired person. He just wants to rest, but he has to do it all again. And I guess he must resent Faye for that, because he just wanted to escape the action and killing gods and having to fight. But she fleshes it all out again, annoyingly for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, like doesn't lie to him necessarily, but there is a scene actually where like he has to lift a log, I think, and she's kind of like, "Oh, you need to lift it. It's too heavy for me," And it's like, "Oh, okay, sneaky." There were some people. I mean, look, I know they don't exist, but there were some people online who were sort of saying, did we want more in terms of did we want to find out where they met? Do we want to find out how they met? Did we want to find out what killed Faye or what she died from? What do you guys? Elle, what did you think?
We never find out how she died. Do we?
I think she just gets ill, doesn't she? I'm pretty sure in the game they just say it's just as simple as she just becomes ill and she gets something and she just dies from that. I don't think there's any specific cause, like she had a fight or got poisoned or injured or anything. She just
chlamydia
kind of withers away.
It's just she knows what's supposed to happen, and yes, like you said, that Kratos is trying to get away from it, but she's almost like, I'm really sorry, but you're gonna have to do this because the Nine Realms needs you, and I'm gonna have to be as secretive as I need to be, because if I tell you these things, it's probably not going to work out this way. So look, this is what you got to do when I die, and yeah, there's going to be a chain reaction, and you're going to be put through paces, but it needs to be done, sort of thing. And she sort of thought about everybody else. rather than what what is going to happen to Kratos and Atreus. But I think she knew in the long run that everything was going to be okay.
Yeah, I did
but
giggle out when
no,
you like put through paces. I was like, put through paces, and then he fucking died 20 times.
A quest. I'm only on a quest. Yeah. So yeah, I don't need any more answers from that side of things. It's just up to imagination. You just have to roll with it. Some things you just have to take on board and just accept.
Sometimes
That's
it's
it.
not knowing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's mystery. It gives a bit of mystery and intrigue behind it. You don't need to know, and then you can kind of make your own mind up as to how they met, can't you? Really, I suppose.
Absolutely, and like you say, Al, that's an interesting point you make actually about, I guess, the selfishness of Kratos in that he selfishly wants to kill all the Greek gods, right? He does that. He then almost selfishly wants to settle down with Faye, and actually, Faye wants him to become what he was again, but for selfish-less reasons. Which is, I think, an interesting comparison, isn't it? It's a bit like when Atreus says, like, stop being a dad, we need you to be a general now. It's time to be a general. We need to kill Odin. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like the complete opposite, isn't it? In the first game, he's too much like a general and not a dad.
Right.
And now, when it counts, he's more like a dad than he's a general.
Yeah.
Again, I forgot about this until I watched the recap. It's the very end scene, sort of as Atreus leaves, and you go to that board, the murals you see in the woods, and there's finally the one the one that is actually supposed to happen all along, right? Atreus fucks off, and then Kratos goes round the back and sees a statue of himself, if you remember, being worshipped, and until I sort of heard it from this recap, that's actually what almost Kratos needs to be worshipped as, because he was the ghost of Sparta. He was known for killing all these people, killing his own family and everything, when actually he's which is also a prediction to maybe come true, that actually he's now going to be worshipped as a god for doing something good, which is protecting the Nine Realms or whatever. So it's almost like Freya's almost going to be giving him what he always almost deserved in a weird way, which is to be worshipped as a good person.
Yeah, and
as a god.
I don't know if you remember this, guy, L and guys, but Odin does allude to that at some. It might be when he interrupts you and Freya. Well, you're on your own because you split up from Freya. But he comes in. He comes in the crow form. He confronts. Yeah, and he goes like, "You haven't been worshipped. You don't know what it's like to be a god, to be prayed to. You don't know what it's like if people rely on you." So yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Foley, what do you think about the gameplay compared to the first game specifically? Because we had the two weapons, right? We've got the Chaos Blades, or Blades of Chaos, and the Leviathan Axe. Did you expect a third weapon? But generally speaking, how did you find the actual gameplay and the combat?
Yeah, it's just as slick as the first game. Are you including things like the perks and stuff here?
Absolutely,
as well,
mate. Get it all in. Yeah. Get it all in.
A game like that, it's a very, very well thought out. And do you know what? I don't think it's too intricate. I think it's just it's good enough, but it's basic enough still for you to fully grasp it and understand what the hell's going on.
Sure.
There's a lot of games, a lot of RPGs that, when you upgrade a weapon or anything, it's got 7 different windows to try and upgrade it. It's different, tune it and stuff. It's very simple. You literally pick this, bam, you upgraded it. It's very simple. I like that aspect of it. And the gameplay again was smooth. I thought the spear, a nice addition. I didn't expect the third weapon, only until they pulled up with the ring. It was like, oh, here, hang on, what's going to happen here? Like, what we're going to come out with? It's going to be some sort of special weapon that we only get to use in a single cutscene or a boss fight. but no, it turns out to be something that we can use for combat. And if I'm honest, I use the spear predominantly after obtaining it. I think
Did you
it's
really?
probably my favorite weapon after. Yeah.
Oh,
I
I'm
used it
saying
the most. Yeah, I used
shit.
the same, the spear predominantly, and it was I actually only really used the Blades of Chaos and the Leviathan axe because I felt bad. I was like, oh, these are still cool weapons, but but again, yeah, they have their own uses, don't they? I like the Blades of Chaos. I think they're easily the weakest out of the three.
Agreed.
Um,
Agreed.
the axe obviously is the most powerful, but takes its time, is a bit slower. But I think the spear was a very nice balance between the two. But still extremely quick. And it was a good addition to the arsenal that he had, and a nice surprise. As I said before, I thought it was going to be something that you'd only really get to use in a big boss fight, like against Odin or a god. But we got to use it as a weapon all round, so that was pretty good. Yeah,
El,
nice and smooth. Not much else to say about it, really.
so you used the spear as well? Did you predominantly?
yeah. After I was just like, this is good because I remember the spear was very good for getting the white bar to do a stun attack up
Yeah,
quite
that's
quick.
right. Mm-hmm.
Right, from what I remember anyway. So it's a bit like those R3 button attacks, where you basically just killed the enemy even if it had like half health, was a lot easier to sometimes do than have to completely deteriorate an enemy's health.
Yeah.
So it was quick. You could unlock perks again, which helped, which then you could throw more spears into a person, and the spears would stay there.
And then detonate.
And then you do that. Yeah, don't you? You do the slam attack, and then they all sort of explode on the character, which then stuns the enemy. So again, it just really helped. Great addition. Absolutely, didn't see that coming. I was well looking forward to you, all of you, to get to that point where it was a bit like, holy shit, a new weapon, because it's like almost as a spoiler as Odin being Tyr sort of thing. It's a bit like, fuck, there's a new weapon. We need to talk about this.
Totally.
It was very good for the Trials of Muspelheim as well. It was a really useful weapon, especially when you had a couple of those King of the Hill type matches you had to do.
Yes.
If you remember, they were very useful for that.
Yeah. Ted?
I actually, whether I'm misremembering, but I preferred the combat in the first game than the second game. I found the combat in the second game a bit slower.
Same.
It was almost more, I wouldn't say clunky. It just felt a bit stiffer. Whereas I remember the first game, it felt a bit faster and more fluid.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought the second game, it was tighter, as in you had to be a bit more precise in what buttons you pressed at certain times. Whereas the first game felt a bit more, well, not slick, but it was a bit more raw and faster, I found. Which I personally preferred, to be honest.
Yeah, I felt like that straight away when I started playing the second one. I was like, I don't remember the combat being this, like you say, clunky. It was almost like slower, like you said. It was a bit like, I don't remember it feeling like this. It felt a lot quicker and more action-packed and smoother, like you said in the first one. But whether or not that's because by the end of the first one, you've got your upgraded gear and everything, so maybe everything feels quicker because you've got your upgraded gear, and obviously you've got to start from scratch in this one. But I felt the exact same way.
I didn't expect the spear, so the spear was a nice touch, but admittedly, I didn't predominantly use this. Well, I did use the spear a lot for the stun stuff. Pummel a load of spears into someone and then tap and then detonate all the other spears. But I was between the spear and the Blades of Chaos, and to be honest, I actually really preferred the Blades of Chaos over the axe, purely because the blades, you could attack multiple enemies within a radius all at once, which quite a lot of the time you'd get overwhelmed by a large number of enemies, and it was quite useful to sort of spread enemies out, I suppose, like a shotgun, I guess. The axe I actually found the least effective because it was too slow. I thought in the first, which is perhaps the first game where the combat to me felt faster, the axe was more usable, whereas in this game I found it really clunky and hard to use. and you could do the odd big slam attack with an ice blast or something like that, but I didn't really enjoy using the axe massively, which is a bit of a shame, I guess, because it's supposed to be the main weapon and it's the most Norse weapon of them all, really. Because even a spear is really it's a Spartan weapon, isn't it? She makes the spear because she looks, doesn't it's something to do with Kratos, isn't it, when she makes the weapon? So the spear is like a Spartan spear, so that's like his Greek spear, I guess. And then he's got his blades of chaos. So the axe is really supposed to be the main Nordic weapon, and I found it the least effective towards the end of the game. And I did find some of the like there are certain moves you did where you had to move the stick forward at a certain time, like a very precise point to do a certain attack, and I could never get those right, to a point where I just didn't bother doing them the whole game. And some of them were actually quite useful attacks, but you had to press, it was either left stick or right stick, and you had to press it like forward, or we had to like dodge backwards and then press R1 straight after you dodge backwards to do a certain thing. But it's such a precise movement that I just found it was too difficult to do in the real world, if you like, when you're being attacked by like 5 enemies all at once, and you're like, oh, so if I just press backwards and then I went, So I found some of the combos a bit redundant, really. But whether that's because I just didn't spend enough time bothering to learn them and practice them, perhaps. But I enjoyed the combos and whatnot in the first game a bit more for some reason. But maybe that's just me, wearing my tinted glasses towards the first game or the second game, and it's probably just the same.
Yeah, to be honest with you, it's really interesting, Ted, because I swear I'm not just saying this just to disagree, but I actually found the opposite for me. I found, not only did I find that the axe was my preferred weapon of choice because I felt like it did the most damage, so I could clear enemies sort of quicker. I felt like the blades were a bit weaker in that sense. So like instead of like killing someone in 3 hits, the blades took a lot more. But also I found that for whatever reason, I actually tried to learn and find combos in this game compared to 2018, where I did feel like I was just button mashing for the whole game, basically. But I swear to you, I'm not just saying that just to like disagree. That's genuinely how my experience was. But yeah, how I think it's interesting that we've all got different preferred weapons. I think that's probably a compliment to them, to the designers, in that we all feel like we had a different favorite weapon almost, because I think that's what better choice can you possibly provide if fucking 3 out of 4 people or 2 out of 4 people all have a different choice of their favorite weapon, and there's only 3 choices anyway. So I think that's pretty cool, to be fair.
I think it depends on play style, doesn't it, as well? So in some instances.
Yeah, of course. I think you guys are probably right in that it felt a bit slower, to be fair. Like, especially if I try and remember about 2018, I remember it being quicker for sure. And I'll also say, I think some of the ending animations of when you kill things were a bit more, dare I say, PG in this one. So in the first, in 2018, even we all know the troll, takedown. It was like, but in this one, I was a bit like, okay, that was all right.
Yeah, I did find it a bit underwhelming when certain enemies disappeared or died or disintegrated. I did notice that. I mean, it's gone from the extremes of the original God of War games where he would tear people in half and do these horrible, brutal takedowns of monsters and rip their jaws off and pull their eyes out and slap them around the face with their own eyeball or whatever, But being quite reserved. But I don't know why they were reserved. Was it an 18? It doesn't really matter. It's obviously tailored for an adult audience, so why cut it back?
Yeah,
left-wing propaganda. No, I don't know. Maybe they were arguing. Maybe they would argue that because Kratos is getting softer, and more relatable, maybe it's reflected in that. But were you going to say something else? Sorry.
No, I was, like Ted said, I think the only times where he did something really gruesome was when it was one of those big fights.
like with the Nidhogg, the portal thing,
Yeah.
Freya's tree, that was like gruesome. And then the first time you come across in the dwarven thing, you climb under a rock and you see this giant dead sea creature thing, and you're like, oh, thank God, I ain't got to fight one of those. And then there's one just to the left, and it's like, like you said, but the normal enemies, yeah, there was a great variation of enemies, but like you said, when you were killing them, it didn't have that satisfying like, fuck you, die, yes sort of moment. It was just like, yeah, he's dead. So what?
Yeah. Definitely. To move on, I guess, unless you guys obviously just interrupt me if you do want to, talk about whatever really. But to move on, I know we've talked about how amazing this world looks. So it sounds as though you guys probably don't think that there were probably some elements of this game that were held back because it was also available on PS4, to be political about it. You guys very much feel that this game was stunning, top to bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were certain points in the game. I didn't find it so much in Midgard where it's snowy, because snow's just white everywhere, isn't it? It doesn't look that special. But Vanaheim, especially where you're going out in the canoe through those kind of waterways, and there'll be certain times where there is like lily pads and the light on the reflection of the water and everything, where it genuinely did look lifelike. And there's just so much detail packed into all the vegetation and the trees and the shrubbery and all the creatures surrounding the pathways that you're on as well. And quite often in games they look nice, but it's the same textures just copied and pasted, the same few bushes that here, there, and everywhere. But it was almost like every leaf had been drawn and mapped like a real, like the real world, really, I suppose.
Yeah, to be fair, Ted, as well, to that point, I think some of the side quests really are some of those moments I talked about, in terms of like the giant jellyfish, or the way that the dragon beheaded sits at Freya's old temple or whatever. Like, there's certain shots that the game poses which really stand out in my mind. It's just like, shit. Do you know what I mean? Like, whoa, that's beautiful.
I think the coolest part of the whole game was when you go to Muspelheim and you find Suter, the fire giant, and then he, I can't remember,
Oh yeah,
does his thing, doesn't he? Whatever he does, he kills himself, doesn't he, or whatever?
Yeah, basically he gets
And then
he gets
see
his heart ready to, and then Kratos stabs him in there. Yeah.
And is it the stars or the galaxy? You see something, don't you? But they look like stars, and there's just all these crazy light particles spinning around.
Yes.
I can't remember exactly what happens, but I remember that point being like, "This is insane." I thought the Bifrost sequence in the first game, where you travel between worlds and there's all like in the world tree and there's all those particles going everywhere. I thought that was cool, but this was like the next level of that.
Absolutely. Like I can't remember what the name of it is, but it's the point where Niflheim and Muspelheim were created or whatever, or they collide. But yeah, I agree that area is incredible. It's sort of related to the world. First of all, did you, Elle, I know you platinumed it. Foley, you mentioned you platinumed it. Ted, did you platinum this game?
No.
Okay.
I don't.
He has a life.
Yeah. Fair enough. You didn't feel I assume you don't give a shit about trophies?
No, not really. No, I don't. I just play games to enjoy the game now. I don't get out of my way to look for things anymore. Find collectibles, whatever. Yeah.
Well, if you went to the trouble of doing that, Ted, I think you'd encounter what we did, which is that Foley, did you find that there were certain areas where you thought, I'm done here, I could do with a fast travel now? I did. Did you get into that when you were cleaning up on the platinum? Did you think, I've looked around this Valheim for quite a bit now, I'm ready to get going?
Well, I don't know. Before I actually completed the story, I did a lot of bits on the way. There
Sure.
wasn't much for me left to clean up at the end. Um, to be quite honest, I made sure I'd done the majority of it because I knew as soon as I'd finished the main storyline, that I wouldn't feel like I'd have the motivation to finish it off. So if I remember rightly, I did everything before I finished the main story. And if I didn't, if I did have something left, it was only something extremely minor. Perhaps I think you couldn't actually get maybe one of the flowers or access a certain area. I think of Vanaheim perhaps until you did finish. So I think there was very minimal bits left to do for me when I finished. So,
Fair.
but there was a couple of areas. Yes, fast travel would have been certainly very helpful.
Yeah, for sure. El, did you find that at all when you were doing the platinum? What, El, did you do much side stuff along the way of the game?
Yeah, I did what I always try not to do, because I know with that sort of game, like the first one, sometimes you don't always have the ability to unlock certain areas. So obviously, without unlocking the spear, you do.
Yeah,
There were bits. Obviously, you saw those bits on the wall, which was like collecting air, and you're like, "What the fuck is that? Like, what do I need to use whatever that is?" And realizing, obviously, now it's just a spear you throw into the wall so you can climb up it or whatever. But again, I did what I shouldn't have done. Was I did everything as I could unlock it, even though I knew I would have to fucking come back and go almost every single area anyway.
yeah,
And
yeah.
bits just take up more time. And I know I said it to Foley, but like I said, I can appreciate with Foley's circumstances where it's a bit hard when you do the main story. You just sometimes do not have that motivation to do all the rest of the side stuff. Now, I'd probably be a little bit less like that, and because I obviously paid for the game and everything, I thought I'm going to get my money's worth. I'm going to do everything. I'll get the platinum.
Yeah.
But still, I still wound up. Oh, haven't been here yet. I'll find out if I could do everything. Nope. Okay, I'll have to come back later then. And then end up doing that for all the realms basically, which again probably put up my gameplay by 5 hours, but it is what it is. So yeah.
That's why I didn't bother platinum it really, because I've especially found it with Vanaheim, because Vanaheim is quite confusing because it was so jungle and thick, full of there's a lot of times where I became disorientated and forgot which way I'd come because all the waterways looked the same. Then I'd look on the map and be like, I need to get over there, but how do I get over there?
Yeah.
I don't know. And then I'd be like, well, am I supposed to be trying to get there yet? Am I missing something that's stopping me getting there? I don't know. And so I gave up in the end and I just carried on. But that it is, yeah, I get it because it's a linear game world per se. And they need to try and do something to make it bigger than it is in a way, I guess. But it is a bit frustrating having to go back on yourself and also remember where to go back on yourself.
Yeah.
You'll see certain things and be like, oh,
yeah,
I'll come up. I can't do anything with that now. But then you'll forget where it was, especially like in Svartalheim, which is where you go. One of the first places you go, isn't it? And there's a number of things there which you can't do until later in the game. But you have to use a bloody boat to get around the place. And there's different beaches and shorelines. And you're like, well, which bloody beach is it again? Oh, I can't remember which part it is. Oh, I'll give up. Put rock.
I wonder how you felt when Vanaheim opened up to an even bigger area.
Yeah, the desert bit at the top. And you're like,
well, yeah, that I didn't even finish the desert. I did some of it, but again,
that was a lot.
Similar thing. It's like so vast and so many different paths and parts of the map, and then that as well, because it was a different world at night from what it was during the day, wasn't it?
Yeah,
It had a Majora's Mask feel to it, actually. So that complicated it even more, which I get. Like, if you're an avid gamer and you want that level of depth and whatever else, but I find with that sort of game, I'd kind of got to a point where I struggle to play games when the story's over.
Yeah.
So I try and do as much as I can whilst I'm playing the story, but it gets to a point where I'll start getting bored with the game entirely. So I have to finish the story. If not, I won't finish it at all.
Yeah, I get
Which
that.
digressing is what happened with Ghost of Tsushima. So Tsushima. Ghost of Tsushima, I kind of got to a point where I've been playing it so long, I was starting to get slightly bored. So I had to just finish the story in the end. Maybe I'm just a poor gamer. I shouldn't be on this podcast. Who am I?
Do you play mobile games? Do you play
No.
mobile, Jake? You're fine. You're fine. Yeah, I agree with all that, Ted. That it's sad, isn't it? You should be excited when you come onto a new area, but as soon as I found that area north of Anaheim, I literally I think I sighed. I actually think I
No,
sighed.
literally. Fuck! Honestly, it's massive. And then, but then the bit is it only shows that first bit, and then you go down a bit and it opens up another bit, and you're like, "Fuck!"
Yeah, that's right.
There's like another third off,
It goes-
and then you go left slightly, and you open up, and there's another bit, all the waterways again, and you're like, and the dam, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Fuck!" Sake.
Do you feel like if that whole part of Vanaheim wasn't in the game, do you think it'd have made any difference at
No,
all?
absolutely not.
Your conclusion of the game.
No, absolutely
No.
not. Would have made a difference to me.
On that point, Ted, yeah, I genuinely feel like I know I probably hate on the story a bit more than at least Foley and Ted, yeah. But sometimes I felt like going through the game almost suffered in its pacing, in that I almost felt like the story was longer than it needed to be in some areas, especially in some areas, because they wanted us to go to the all 9 realms and all these different areas. So it was a bit like, for instance, when we go back to Svartalheim and we're in the base, I don't know if you guys remember, but you're in the base, like you're in the mines. It was just a bit like, or right near the end of the game, you go to Niflheim and Helheim as Atreus or whatever. And so it was a bit like, fuck, are we really going back here? Are we really going back here? Like, can we not just get there? Can we not just go straight there? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I get you.
There was a bit of convolution.
Go on, Alan. What are you gonna say?
Also, there's a lot more traveling back to realms, more than maybe required. Like you say, if we only had to go to each realm once, that probably would have been enough.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been beautiful.
I mean, it's even slightly frustrating going back to Alfheim. I know the jellyfish stuff was cool in the desert.
Yeah.
But you have to go back there several times, don't you? Because there's a third time you have to go back, don't you, to open that door. There's that big door, isn't there, where you need a certain key?
Yeah.
But so you could potentially end up going to Alfheim 3 times. The first time with the story with Tyr, the second time with the jellyfish, and then the third. Or is it? Can you do both jellyfish at the same time, or do you have to do one, then come back and do the second one?
Oh,
You
That's a
have
good question.
to you have to come back to do the second
So you
one.
have to come back, what, like maybe 4 times?
Oh, mate, I went
Yeah.
to every realm a
The
minimum
same
of 4 or
place.
5 times. 100%.
And that does get slightly laborious after a while. You just want to do all of it and think, right, I've done that now. I've done that realm. Lovely. Tick the box. Move on.
I think
Yeah.
go on, Al.
also, you knew how. Well, we didn't know, but you then found out actually how big they were going to be, because in Midgard you obviously start off on the sleigh with the 2 walls, right? And you can maneuver around Midgard on the cart, which is great. And then obviously once you get to Alfheim with the elves, and then there's another cart, and you're like riding on the sand, you're like, oh fuck! Like
Mhm.
the reason I give this vehicle is because it's a lot fucking bigger, because I can't just walk places. So yeah,
Yeah.
fuck.
Well,
I think,
and everything's frozen, so you can't sail anywhere.
Yeah, true. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that always comes to conflict, doesn't it, with that old argument of like, so let's obviously Elle bought the game. I think we all borrow it from Elle? I don't even know, but
I did. I
Ted
definitely
bought
borrowed it.
We Ted bought it as well. So
I borrowed it. I borrowed it from Ted actually, so I didn't borrow it from Elle.
fair. Okay, fair.
Yeah,
That
'cause
age.
that's why. Phoney up.
Hey, look, at least I finished it. At least I finished it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's that age-old argument, isn't it? Of like, oh, get your money's worth, right? And like, maybe I know, Al, you're not necessarily like this, but maybe there is people out there who are like, well, if it's not 45 to 50 hours, I want my fucking money back. I personally am of the opinion of, yeah, but if it's 20 or 30 hours and it's the best 20 or 30 hours you'll spend on a game this year, who gives a shit, man? You know, but I think there's definitely areas in this game that don't need to be that long, frankly, story and otherwise.
There's certain types of games where the gameplay and the hours don't quite compute. So, like, I found God of War, because it's such a deep, enriched game, you don't want it to be very, very long, because otherwise it's just too much.
Yeah.
Which is why I think in some ways the first game was better, because it was just right. It was just right.
Yeah.
Whereas, for example, last summer I played 80 hours on Elden Ring. 80 hours. And I don't feel like I played 80 hours at all.
Yeah.
Because it's a sort of game where you grind and you defeat enemies again and again and again. And it's like boss fights where you just die and die and die. But that time feels different because of the type of gameplay it is.
Sure.
Whereas if it was 80 hours of God of War, you want to kill yourself by the end, probably.
Yeah.
You know, imagine 80 hours of that involved deep storytelling and world where you have to pay attention to everything. Whereas in like Elden Ring or Dark Souls, you can just switch off and just run around and swing your sword and kill some enemies, and then you go to a bonfire, whatever, and fast travel and you do it all over again. And it's kind of almost mindless in a way. But yeah, as you said, like the fact that some parts of the game felt too long actually detracted from the game to add to it, ironically.
Yeah.
80 hours. Impressive.
Did you? I'm a big nerd when it comes to soundtracks, guys. Film, game, whatever. I think the soundtrack for 2018 is genuinely one of the best game soundtracks out there.
Yeah, I agree.
Bear McCreary, I think it's Bear McCreary. Some of the tracks on that. So obviously Kratos' theme, Faye's theme. Ultimately, Faye's theme is basically the theme that crops up in this game time and time again. It's her singing. Ultimately, I think.
Well, it's memories of Mother, where she's humming like the. Yeah, that's
best song. That's the best, isn't it?
And Ashes as well, where the music obviously when they cremate her, but that theme's incredible. But just wondering, guys, whether some of the most impactful moments for me in the game was basically when that theme came up in the flash or dreams sequences and that kind of thing. I don't know whether you guys have any memories of the music impacting you, I suppose, particularly. But I know it did for me in a lot of areas.
Not as much as the first game. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, not so. I think in the first game, I remember very clearly the bit when you cremate her is a very poignant moment with the music. That's quite powerful. And then there's also when Kratos is in Alfheim and he's looking into the light of Alfheim and he thinks he hears her voice. I remember the music at that point being quite powerful. And then there's the end of the game when they eventually get to Jotunheim and, spread her ashes. And I distinctly remember those moments. But in the second game, I couldn't tell you at all. I can't remember any significant moments where I remembered the music and the scene in particular.
Yeah.
But that might just be because I played the game a while ago. But then I think I only played the first game twice. I played it once in 2018 and the second time at the end of 2020. So that was over 2.5 years ago. But those scenes are still stuck in my head. So perhaps it's not just because I played the second game 8 months ago.
No, I think that's fair. Another point of memory in terms of music is Kratos's. I think no, that's sorry. Let me start again. When you go back to get the Blades of Chaos, which me and Al, I think both agree is probably the most poignant moment in that game because it collides, Kratos's awful past, both from a character perspective, but also from what he did, and combines it obviously with this new story, and it's just this incredible moment. But yeah, the Kratos' theme sort of crops up in that moment, and when he's talking to Athena, who's the same voice actress as the first three games, when you're talking to Athena, and she's like, "You're a monster," and he's like, "I know, but I'm not your monster no longer." It's like that moment I will always remember forever until I get Alzheimer's. I'm always going to remember that moment. And there's maybe a couple of moments I might remember in Ragnarok, but maybe not. Maybe not.
I think what the conclusion we're coming to is that the first game is actually better than the second game. That's what I'm hearing, really. And I was thinking about this earlier. I think what makes the first game, in terms of story, more satisfying is just the whole story is as simple as we're going to take Mother's ashes to the top of the highest peak.
Exactly.
That's it. That's the only goal. Like, you ignoring everything else that happens, that's ultimately all they want to do. That's the entire game. Even though they come across all these challenges and monsters and gods and whatever else, all they want to do is get to the highest peak in the Nine Realms and spread the Mother's ashes. It's just such a simple sort of human story, and that's ultimately their goal and what happens at the end. Whereas Ragnarok isn't quite as simple as it. It's a lot more complicated and it's on a grander scale and has bigger consequences, but it feels less human or less relatable, I suppose.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think that's probably what makes it much more sweeter and satisfying, that you have these two, a father and son, who don't really have a great relationship because Kratos spent all his time hunting, and they both had different relationships with Faye, their the mother and wife respectively, and they don't really know each other, but they're having to get on with it because they have a common goal of spreading Mother's ashes. But throughout the game, their arc is they get to know each other better, and by the end respect each other and have a better relationship because they want to put Faye's ashes at the highest peak. And I just think it's such a better, it's just got a better story. Just that in itself is a better story than Ragnarok has. So maybe it's not that one game is better than the other in terms of gameplay, whatever, but just simply the narrative itself is just nicer.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure Ragnarok has a goal in the first hour. I think
No, I
Atreus
suppose it
tries to.
doesn't.
I think Atreus tries to define the goal as we need to kill Odin, but it doesn't really set the
It's not
goal.
satisfying, is it? It's not a heartwarming kind of satisfying goal which makes you feel sort of complete, I suppose, or fulfilled compared to the goal in the first game.
Couple of things I want to ask about before I forget. Heimdall, biggest dick of. Oh, is he still there? Is he frozen?
No, I'm here. I didn't know
Oh,
if you.
fucking hell! You were
did
so
that.
still then. Jesus
No,
Christ!
I thought when you said L, I thought I'm sure you're talking to me, but I just wanted to double check just in
Fucking
case.
hell. I kind of love how much of a dickhead they made Heimdall. I genuinely do, but he is the biggest dick of all time, right?
He's very. He's almost like the Balder in this one.
Oh, I think that's a bit harsh, but go on.
I know it's a bit harsh, but I know like Thor and Balder are brothers, but you almost. But Balder all brings it upon himself because he's the one trying to fight you, and you're like, "Fuck off, leave me alone." And then Heimdall is just a know-it-all fuck boy, and you're just like, "Fuck off, you need to die."
Don't you love the bit?
Uh,
Don't you love his intro though, where he's literally like,
Heimdall's?
yeah. So you're climbing the wall, the mountain,
Yeah,
as
yeah,
Atreus, and he's like, huh. What part of the 3,000-foot wall made you think, yeah, I'm invited? I was just like, oh, I just think it's fucking great. But
I can't remember some of his statements, but I'm sure it was,
it's
you know,
something like that. I'm paraphrasing
yeah,
greatly,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, when as you said it, I was a bit like, yeah, I'm sure. I do remember sort of him saying something, fuck you, sort of thing, or
yeah.
clever. But again, I felt well good about fucking punching his fucking face in.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Um, what did you guys have any strong feelings towards Heimdall? Or I know you're supposed to hate him, so I guess we all do, right?
Good character. Another good character. I thought it was well written.
Do you mind if I
Glad you
ask
got
you
to kill him,
guys, Foley and Ted? Do you mind if I ask, when you say well written, in your minds, what do you mean and think about like that, in terms of what do you mean when you say that? Is it, the story in general? Is it characters? What do you guys mean by that? Because when you say that, I wouldn't necessarily like sort of go and be like, yeah, no, really well written, to be honest with you. But what do you guys mean by that? Or how do you feel about that?
Oh, what you
Fair.
said exactly. Go on. Sorry, I let you first, Ted.
Well, just their script, I suppose, their
Yeah.
dialogue.
Okay.
Feels
Well, you've admitted, oh, I hated Heimdall, and I really liked some of the things he said.
Yeah.
That kind of in itself is justified the point of it being well written, because you're supposed to hate Heimdall because you've got to kill him, and he is supposed to be an arrogant sod who can foresee everything, and so he thinks he's better than everyone else. And the same with Boulder. Like you kind of hate Boulder in the first game, but you weakly feel sorry for him because all he wants to do is just feel like a normal person. His mother's cursed him and feel nothing at all at the expense of being invincible or whatever, but he'd rather feel than. So that is what I mean by well written. And the fact we've all agreed that all the characters are all very good. They all serve their purpose as intended, you couldn't say any one of the characters or any one of the cutscenes or dialogue is poorly executed or well, I mean the voice acting helps bring it to life as well, I guess. But
Yeah.
there's some films you watch or things you read where you think, oh, what are they saying to each other? It's just so corny, or that was just so poorly done, or like, ugh. But I don't feel like any of the scenes in the game felt like that at all. It all felt very genuine, and the script writing was very good.
I concede. The only thing I would say is maybe Atreus didn't come across as strong as we would have hoped, maybe because like Foley says that with the best will in the world, I think you still like and want to play as Kratos more in every occasion. And I can't.
But
In
Atreus
contrast,
he isn't supposed to be strong, is he? In a physical sense, or I think his character is still very good. I think that as I touched upon earlier, I don't think is necessarily the character's fault. It's just in most games I play, where you play as a side character, you just always want to get back to the main character again.
Yeah.
Well, I think the example of this would probably be Abby in The Last of Us Part 2. I don't know if you guys have played that, but
yeah,
oh fuck it! What are we doing here? What are we fucking doing here? What are we doing here?
Talking about God of War, not fucking Last of Us.
Basically, let's just say you play from the opposite perspective, and like literally as opposite as you can fucking imagine. And by the end of it, I think El, do you agree that you're like, yeah, I feel for her side and point of view, 100%.
yeah, you hate her to begin with for what she's done, and then by the end of it, you're like,
I see it.
you're like, I can see why she's pissed. I'm on her side now. So,
And
yeah.
I feel like I don't know. With some of Atreus' moves, I was just a bit like, sure, I guess you're a teenager acting out a bit. You know, you're very frustrated with your dad. Um, you wanna get laid with Thrud. I get it. But you know. Oh, by the way, how hot is Thor's wife? Oh my days.
Yeah,
Golden.
she was always supposed to be quite beautiful in the stories, and
God.
her hair is made by the dwarfs because, well, no, digressing again because there's a story where Loki magically he shaves her head or something in the night, and she wakes up without any hair, and Loki's done something to her hair. So Thor gets really angry and says, "I'm going to kill you if you don't get her hair to grow back." So, and that's actually how Thor's hammer's made. But anyway, that's a long story. But anyway, the point is, the dwarfs make her a magical wig or whatever, so she has this amazing hair, and that's why she has nice blonde hair. But that's
True.
probably completely different in the in the game because Loki is Atreus, and obviously that hasn't happened.
Yeah, no,
But she has got
100%.
great in the game.
Um, I think we probably haven't given enough attention to one of the key characters of the whole game, Mimir. I mean, he's the best, right? No,
I don't feel like Mimir was as significant though in this game.
No,
really?
No, I disagree. I think he was much more significant.
Yeah, I have to agree
You
with
find
that.
out so much more about you find out so much more about him.
I don't remember.
No, but I feel like he in the first game you of course cut his head off and he helps you. He explains to you kind of the history of the gods and what all the realms are and how to get to Jotunheim and about Tyr and everything, and he tells you all these stories whilst you're sailing around Midgard on the Lake of Nine. But I don't feel like he had that same impact in the second game.
Same.
Totally. Do you agree? I think they're on crack.
No, no, I think he had a bit more of an impact in Ragnarok. He definitely was a bit more of another father figure for Atreus, almost, if you like, another shoulder of wisdom. But yeah, I don't agree with that. But maybe because I haven't played the first one for ages. I mean, I haven't played it since 2020, so I can't really remember what it was like. But from what I do remember, I think he had a more significant role in Ragnarok,
I
and he's
think
more effective.
I think you guys are right in that maybe he didn't have quite the same bold and memorable stories as you're wandering around. But I think part of that is probably because obviously we get introduced to the fact that, well, actually, Mimir's side, as detailed as it is only one side of the story. And, you get told by Thor and Thrud and Odin throughout the game that, oh, did Mimir tell you that? Because there is a missing part to that story. There's two sides to every story. But I also think, like, the development of the whale in Svartalheim and how Mimir helped enslave the whale and how he helped basically fuck over every god there is, including Freya. I think there's a good character development for him. You know what I mean? And fighting the Valkyries, in other terms, and he's like, oh, I hate these berserkers. Kill him. So
Yeah, I think I know what you're saying because I'm not saying that Mimir didn't have a bigger part or that wasn't as interesting. I just think from that first game, because you are traveling a lot, like Ted said, on the boat, there's almost an element of storytelling where you just shut up and listen. And sometimes you found yourself not getting to the shore yet because you wanted to finish to hear what Mimir was about to say. Right? So it's a bit like that first game was a bit like, whoa, whatever he's going to tell me is probably going to be important and it's interesting. And it's probably the same in Thingy, but it's probably just because we're used to it and it's just side stuff. Yep, go on, Mimir, keep telling the story. Yep, that's fine. Yep, fine. Yep, no worries. Okay, thank you. But like from the first game, it was way more, I don't know, captivating, I guess.
Oh, okay.
The first game there aren't so many characters and you're a lot more isolated. Like it's just basically Kratos and Atreus, and Mimir is your only kind of key into that world. He tells you the stories and the history between the gods and why Odin is how he is, and what happened between Odin and Freya, and what happened to the giants, what happened to Tyr. And he is kind of your main vessel, if you like. You rely heavily on him to help assist you get to where you need to be and enlighten you about why certain events have happened and why things are the way they are. And I think he has more significance in that sense. Whereas in the second game, I feel like his significance is detracted because you have all these other, storylines going on and other characters, and he just doesn't seem quite as. It just doesn't stand out as more. He's like a smaller fish in a bigger pond, whereas in the first game, he's a big fish in a smaller pond kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think that's fair. I think you're probably right, Elle, in that the stories are probably a little bit more captivating. But again, I wonder whether that's because there's so much to know. At that point, we know nothing about all these gods and the worlds and realms and the history. But yeah, I get that. I get your argument, your point of view for sure. Yeah. What's everyone's favorite moment from Ragnarok? Do we have a favorite moment?
I'm glad you're on this because it's the only bit we almost haven't brought up. And for me, it's the bar scene when Odin tells Atreus to go get Thor to find the second part of the mask, and you go to this tavern. The last part? Oh, the last part. Sorry, the last part then of the mask. It would be the last part. Sorry, because he's already got the first bit, and then you go get the second bit in Muspelheim. So yeah, so he tells you to go to the Great Hall Tavern, I think it is, and he's obviously drunk, and there's a bar fight, and I think going back to an earlier question, I think that's the only music that I also remember that is obviously different from the original game. That I was a bit like, it's almost like the Benny Hill theme or something like that. It was quite entertaining, but that was my favorite bit personally. I just loved that bit. I don't know why. I just loved it.
Yeah, I thought it was great too. Foley?
When I got the platinum trophy and I turned it off. In all seriousness, I thought, when I think back, one of the shining moments is when a massive twist happens and Tyr is revealed as Odin. Was a great twist, one that I didn't see coming. I completely didn't see it coming. It really was like, whoa, shit. That was really good. That was a great moment in the game. What else? Yeah, there's a couple others, but yeah, a few, but nothing like that. I think that was probably the best moment in the game for me such a big shock. I was like, wow. But yeah,
Ed,
that's mine.
I've got an idea. I've got a theory of what yours will be, but what's yours?
I mean, mine isn't particularly. Well, I don't know. I think it's not very story orientated, but my favorite part is the bit where in Muspelheim when you find the fire giant and you fight two Valkyries, don't you? Before
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
he does his thing.
Kirsten Mist or something like that.
Yeah, so I think that was my favorite part of the game, just because the graphics in that moment were arguably some of the best I've ever seen. And I just remember in that moment looking round, just moving the camera around, looking up at the ceiling of wherever you are, the sky, or whatever, and just like taking it in with awe. And then so that fight scene before it with the two Valkyries is great, and that is ultimately there's many significant parts of the story, but without that key element, Ragnarok doesn't sort of begin, because he has to. I can't remember exactly what he has to do. He has to do something with his heart, doesn't he? With the ice giant who he loves, but he doesn't want to
kill her. Yeah. So instead, they use Kratos' Chaos Blade.
So So without that, he then doesn't become that huge giant, and who then obviously goes to Asgard and starts tearing the place up. So anyway, that would be my favourite part.
I like riding the yak and collecting little seeds. That was cute.
I fucking hated that bit.
It's so boring.
That
That was
Oh
boring. I'll
my
admit that was
God.
boring.
Jesus
That was boring.
Christ. I thought you were going to say I liked riding the seaweed horse for a second there, but
That was a good scene.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was, yeah. Apparently
I
they're
can't
not.
remember- I can't remember that.
Apparently they're not Norse mythology, at all.
What,
Apparently
the
that
seaweed thing?
yeah, that creature is not Norse mythology
Oh.
at all.
I think they have to pan the gap to see how do we get to these, future seeing hags or whatever under the sea.
Yeah.
So-
yeah.
Yeah, obviously why I used that I don't know, but I didn't mind it. I thought it was quite interesting. It was interesting. I was like, oh wow,
Oh, what realm was that again?
is it
Midgard.
Midgard?
Yeah.
What was it? Was it Midgard? Oh,
Yeah.
Nick, I'm going to bet yours was the first fight with Thor. What is it?
Yeah, I'd probably. Yeah.
oh, cliche.
It is cliche. Do you know what?
Oh,
I was sitting here.
cliche.
I was sitting here thinking about it, and if I'm honest with you, it's probably the tear twist, or it's not even the moment where Faye tells Kratos basically how to live at the end of the game. When Kratos and Atreus comes in and he's like, "Can I sleep in your tent?" I know that's not very exciting,
Yeah.
but I thought that was an amazing moment. And then Kratos has the final dream vision with Faye, and that's where she tells him like how to live his life.
Good development, doesn't it? So it shows a lot of good development, especially Kratos and Atreus' relationship. That scene, especially.
But if
So-
not, I genuinely, I love Thor and I love Boulder, and like every scene with Thor in it, I'm absolutely captivated. And I know he's not even necessarily as interesting as Odin, but I just love him. So, and I love the acting. Oh my God.
Well, Thor's interesting because he's conflicted, isn't he? Because
Yeah,
he wants to be a good father and a good husband, but equally he can't be whilst Odin commands him to go around and do his dirty work. And I think there's an element of guilt as well that hangs over him because he's probably ashamed of killing so many giants and whatever else, like truthfully deep down, although he does hate giants, or supposedly hates giants. And then he
Yeah.
drinks a lot, doesn't he, to try and take away the pain, and then it just makes it worse. And he's not the most intelligent, and Odin uses that to manipulate him. So he's got a conflict, hasn't he? He's a bit like, well, like lots of other characters you could think of. Certain. I mean, I could go back to bloody Star Wars again. He's a bit like Darth Vader, isn't he? I suppose in a way, like he's evil and bad, but at the same time, he kind of doesn't want to be really. Which is what makes him interesting and why you like him.
I think we've got it absolutely, Ted, by the way. I think we've probably got I feel like I should shout out the opening cinematic. Well, when Thor and Odin arrive at the hut, I think we've just been waiting for that scene for so long. It was I just thought it was great, and obviously it ends with the click of the fingers through the roof. Here we go. And even though maybe Odin wasn't expecting, Odin didn't look how we were expecting, I still think it was a good scene, to be honest.
yeah.
It's a very powerful opening cutscene, even though it's not even officially like the opening.
Yeah.
But I know what you mean. It's like it gets you used to the game, the combat, and everything, and then you have a nap, and then you're like, "Fuck, here we are. This is what the
This is what we're
secret
doing."
ending was." Here we go.
Exactly. And then,
Ratatoskir is the most underrated character, though. I'm just going to put it out there.
oh fuck
It
off.
was
The
The
squirrel.
squirrel.
the squirrel. I thought you said the squirrel's name. I was like, what?
Is he Ratataska? Is that his name?
That's it. It's stuff like that, isn't it? Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Legend.
I think
I prefer.
go on.
I'd say I preferred the ghost squirrels of the different emotions.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure one of them tells you, he said like "fuck off" or something like that. Or something like
Yeah, there's like a profanity squirrel or something. Yeah.
The profanity squirrel.
Something
There
like
is
that.
one squirrel where you encourage it to do something, don't you? The one that's quite anxious,
Anxious,
nervous, and then by the end, you prove to it that it can do something, and then it goes, "Oh, thanks." Oh, something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do also like Thor's sort of like first few lines in the game. You know, like, you seem like a calm, reasonable person.
Yeah.
Are you a calm, reasonable person?
It's the first thing he does, because obviously, like, the scene is where the camera pans down to the hammer, and there's little bits of lightning, and then he
Yeah.
reaches back and he pulls out a thing of mead. He's like, "I brought mead."
Yeah.
That's
And
like
then-
the first.
I fucking love that shot as well when he's walking up to Kratos and you're like, you can take him. And then he's twice the height of Kratos and you're like, yeah, I can't fucking take him.
Yeah. Fuck.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Right, it's getting late, boys. I appreciate it's a weeknight, so I do appreciate you nerding out with me about this video game. It's Santa Monica who made this game. What do you guys just think, out of curiosity? What do you think they will look at making next? Because if my theory is correct that they do have two teams, because Corey Barlog, who directed 2018, I think he was creative director on this game, but I'm sure to hell he's directed another game there. What do we think they're making, if anything? Could be new IP, could be something else. And do you want another God of War game? If in our version of the universe, it could happen in this one. Do you want that? So I'll go opposite. I'll start with you. What do you think they're doing? Do you want another God of War game?
Something completely new. No, I don't want another God of War game.
Reasons for something new.
They can do something if they can, like every other PlayStation well-written single-player game, like Horizon or Ghost of Tsushima or anything like that. As long as they have that principle, I'm sure they can write or create something good and use that and do something there. And I think they're a team that are able to do that. And that's why we need something new, not God of War related. No, it doesn't have to be completely different. I'm not saying first person shooter or anything like that. I'm just saying something else. Let's hear it and see it. That's it.
So you want a battle royale game? Joking.
I know.
Joking.
Yeah. I just want something like, something creative, that like a story like Horizon or Ghost of Tsushima, where it doesn't have to be about life. It doesn't have to be real technically. It can be based off history or mythology in this case, or whatever. It can be whatever it wants, but again, it has to have captivating features that you want to learn about and you want to understand, and characters that you fall in love with. The environment's not going to be an issue with any of those games anyway, because everything looks fucking beautiful. But yeah, that's what I want from them.
Yeah. To be fair, Al, to your point, my two favorite games. I mean, The Last of Us was a new IP 10 years ago. So all I'm trying to say is, who knows? Like, I think when people say like new IP or new product, they're like, oh, but why? Sequels are, interesting, exciting. But what I mean is, we could get the best game ever. We don't fucking know, right? We don't know. Who knows what they could do?
2018 God of War was going to be this fucking good. No one did.
100%. Foley, what do you want them to do?
Clearly got the tools and the ability to make a great game, so a new game would be very interesting. But I just think that they are probably working on another God of War related story in the background, because it just makes too much money, and that's why. But I would like to see a new project from them. What that'll be, I don't know, but they've clearly got the, as I said, tools and the ability to do it. So yeah, that's my 2p.
Throwing your dart on the board there, Foley. Where do you reckon they'll go, or where do you want them to go for, like, mythology wise? Because, where would you like them to go?
Well, I heard they were definitely finished with the North side of things. So
Yeah.
if that is true, then realistically, there's nothing really left to tell in that aspect of it, which is cool. They, as someone, Ted said earlier, there's however many other mythologies out there. They could explore any of them, but how received that will be, you don't know, do you? But it could be an Atreus focused game. I know we said he's not really that great of a character to carry it on his own, but I just don't know. My only reason for them saying they would do another God of War is because of the money factor, not because they should, but it's because it just makes too much money. And that's a sad thing when you think about it. But we're looking at probably 2026, 2027. By that point, I've had 5 years since the last one. There's plenty of time to put something together. 4 years each game, I think they spent, didn't they? So
if they don't make another God of War game, Foley, do you think, I don't know who owns it, to be fair, but do you think Sony might ask another studio to make a game?
very good question. Again, it comes down to how much they think this is going to make. If they think it's genuinely something that they really want as part of their lineup for the next couple of years, that'll probably be towards the end of the PS5's lifespan if it does come out. It just depends if they think it's going to be something that they need to strengthen the market. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I think they probably would, but who knows? Would I want it? Would I want to play it? Probably, but it's not. I wouldn't be screaming for it. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be like, oh, I'm really, really happy about that. I played the end of Ragnarok. I thought that it'd be good to have another game, but would I die to play it? Not really.
Yeah. Ted?
I hope they're making Jack and Daxter 4 Finn's Resurrection.
Oh, fuck me. Do you think Naughty Dog's gone, listen, we need Santa Monica, creators of God of War. We're doing Jack and Daxter. God of War type style, though.
I think so to your point about whether Sony would get another studio to make it, no, because they own Santa Monica, so they'd just tell them to do it anyway. So I guess
well, yeah, that's a good point.
Santa Monica will do what Sony tell them because Sony own Santa Monica, like they do Naughty Dog and Insomniac games now. I'd imagine they will make another God of War IP, but I think it will be Atreus, older Atreus, a well-traveled, mature Atreus. He won't be the little kind of wimpy kid here we know. He'll probably be a mature, muscular, athletic, well-traveled, battle-hardened character. Because he's looking for giants, right? So the giants would have gone to another land somewhere. Let's say Egypt, perhaps. And the giants might be in Egypt or something, living within the Egyptian mythological sphere. And they could then write in, Horus and I can't remember the Anubis and all the all the other gods.
Osiris, Isis, yeah.
Yeah. And then it could be like, oh well, the giants built the pyramids. Now it will make now it makes sense. Things like that. So they could do that, but equally they have the talent, I'm sure, to come up with a completely new world, and and perhaps they want to because they've only ever made God of War, haven't they, Santa Monica? Well, predominantly only God of War. That's all they're known for, isn't it? So maybe they themselves will be like, we want to prove that we can do something other than God of War.
Yeah.
But whatever they do, I'm sure it'll be very good because they are one of Sony's crown jewels now. And to be honest, I can't, Insomniac, Naughty Dog, and Santa Monica, none of them make bad games, do they really? So
100%. Just what's interesting is that the license and name God of War means it's so different in its meaning now to what it was pre 2018. Literally a completely different thing. And I think
it's an adult game, wasn't it? It was like it was a button basher, very gory, very graphic, violent. just a nutter. You just played as this lunatic with blades chained to his arms, cutting everything up. Whereas it's now much more than that, isn't it, in terms of story and character development?
100%. And what I'm interested in is 2018 was a reinvention for many reasons. I don't necessarily think they will reinvent it. But what I would be curious about is, will they see this as an opportunity to change it up a little bit? I don't necessarily want that. I could probably do with a game like this every 2 years. I'd probably play it. I'd probably love it. But I'm just curious if they're, from a creative perspective, if they're yearning to change it up, to be fair. I don't know. You know, does it need to be over the shoulder, Last of Us third person with a smaller little helper along you at all times? I don't know, you know. But what do I think they will make? I'll be really honest, boys. I literally haven't got a Scooby. I feel like
No.
my gut tells me honestly, I couldn't tell you. I feel like it's like as likely for them to be making a brand new IP and a brand new type of game as it is them making another God of War game. I genuinely, if they came out and they were like, surprise, Corey Barlog's been working on the next installment, or you know, either Atreus' new journey, or actually there are some old bits we wanted to finish off. We think there's another story here. It's a trilogy. Ta-da! I don't know. I genuinely haven't got a clue. I only know that they tried to make a new IP. I think it was a sci-fi game during the period of the development of God of War 2018, and basically the project got cancelled. So I just don't know what they'll do. And I don't know what Sony will ask them to do, because without getting too much in the weeds of it, Sony at the moment seems to be asking all their amazing first-party studios to make multiplayer games, which is the worst fucking idea I've ever heard. So, and I'm not exaggerating there. Like, apparently Naughty Dog have been making a multiplayer game for Last of Us for the past 4 or 5 years, and it's gone to shit. So, I just don't know what we're going to get. But I hope it's something like this, or as good as this, you know?
Yeah, it does seem. I think people are getting more into single player games again now, aren't they? Like, I know there's Call of Duty and Fortnite and games like that people play avidly still, but I can't think of like a major online game which is, you know, everyone's playing or everyone's talking about. So I think
moment, don't they?
they what? Sorry.
Every game has their moment.
Yeah, I
So,
feel like when the Xbox 360 and PS3 came out and they were online capable, everyone went mad, didn't they, for online gaming, because everyone had only ever played single player games. So the fact you could then play with your friends online and talk to them, it just exploded. But I now feel like it's kind of gone full cycle. Now everyone's more interested in playing retro games again and playing remakes of games from 20 years ago, like Resident Evil 4, for example. I'd say that's probably been one of the most hyped and most talked about kind of releases of this year. And it's a remake of a game from 2005, and it's purely single player. So I'd like to hope that they keep Santa Monica just making single player games. It seems Insomniac are only making single player, aren't they? Because they're making Spider-Man and Wolverine.
Yeah.
And possibly another Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the talent at Santa Monica are just too good, aren't they? Well, with all the studios you mentioned, Ted, as well. But the talent's just so good. Like, you just look at this game and you're like, fucking hell, no one else can make this game. Or at least if Naughty Dog can make it, they can't make it quite in the same way. Do you know what I mean? It's just nuts. And if it was that easy, everyone would do it.
Well, you say that, but it makes you wonder whether, is it just a coincidence? Or are they that good? Because, well, they obviously are that good, but I mean, why is it only a select few game studios can make these exceptional games, and yet all these other studios make such below average subpar games? Is it just that it is really, really hard to make a game, and these studios are the only ones who can make really good games? Or is it just that all the other game studios on the planet are just really, really bad? In, you know, should it be this bad? You know, should there be more consistency? Like, why is it only ever one in however many games that comes out which is exceptional, like a Red Dead 2 or a Zelda or a God of War or or Witcher 3 or something like that? The Witcher 3, for example, they made that game in like 4 years, because The Witcher 2 came out in what, 2011?
That sounds right.
And then The Witcher 3 came out in 2015, and still to this day, people struggle to compete with it, or they copy it at least anyway. So how is it possible for CD Projekt Red to have made that game in 4 years? Let's say they probably worked on it before 2011, but 4 years between the release of Witcher 2 and Witcher 3, and yet they make one of the greatest games ever, which revolutionized the way RPGs are played from there on. So is it just that game studios these days are just really lazy and poorly funded and don't get enough time to develop games? But when they are given that time, they could all make games like God of War.
Yeah, I think it's funding. I think it's time. Again, Cyberpunk's an example where time wasn't on their side. From going from which to that, they've damaged the name, unfortunately. And I'll be honest, I think a lot of people were expecting, when they found out that Santa Monica were doing God of War. Again, I wasn't part of that hype train about it, because I didn't really understand it at that point. I knew there were 3 games before it, but I think a lot of people probably even thought, really? You're doing God of War again?
Yeah, totally. It would have only been... Sorry to interrupt, I was just going to say,
no.
The God of War Ascension came out 2013, and the reveal for this game with the trailer, the gameplay trailer and everything, was E3 2016. So you got to think, in 3 years' time, you're not going to have people going, "Oh, fucking want a God of War." I mean, you have a few people, but not many. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah,
anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly that. So, yeah, I think there's elements. I think time. I think with The Witcher, what helped was the first couple of games had done well for itself, even though it was like PC only. They had done well, and I think they were sort of just given freedom to do it. And with freedom, you get to create the game that you want to create. And in this case, for a lot of PlayStation games that they've released, like Spider-Man, Ghost, Horizon, they've all been phenomenal. And yeah, I don't know, coincidence a little bit. Like, I don't think we're ever going to get this again. Do you remember, do you know what I mean? Like, we had God of War, we had Horizon, we had Spider-Man, all within 5 years or something. I don't think we're ever going to have that again, where we get those sort of level games. Yeah,
I think that's the best PlayStation generation. Like, I genuinely do.
That PS4, that second half of PS4.
Even like Bloodborne, you got Bloodborne, Spider-Man, Ghost of Tsushima, Horizon, Last of Us Part 2. It goes on. God of War. It's mental. Every single one of those games could be someone's favorite game of all time. Frankly, just put it out there. So, yeah,
I think whatever they do, they'll make a good game. Whether it's God of War or not, Sony will give them the time and funding to make whatever they want to make, and they'll give them confidence and backing to do it.
I think it is talent, Ted, because I would hope that Xbox also apparently leave studios and give them their freedom, but also give them the funding, because they're a rich company. And yet, I'm going to be really offensive here, but let's be honest, the results from their exclusive studios are like nothing, basically, in the last 10 years.
Well, even now, I don't follow Xbox much, or Microsoft are doing. But I couldn't tell you of any games I've heard of recently where anyone's been that excited about what Xbox are doing or have released. Even now, what the Xbox, so the latest generation of consoles came out coming up to 3 years ago. And even still, what have Microsoft done? I know they've been buying as many studios as possible, like Bethesda and Activision and whatever else. But even then, we're probably halfway through this console generation realistically, and nothing has come out like with of significance. And yet, at least Sony have pumped out Horizon 2, Spider-Man's this year, had a God of War, Ratchet and Clank. I might be missing something else.
Final Fantasy 16's just come out exclusive, I suppose. I know it's not first party, to be fair.
But and that's just what's coming out so far. There'll be a Wolverine game within the next 2 years as well, I imagine, which will probably be fantastic if Insomniac are making it. So, and whatever else Naughty Dog are up to, and whatever else Santa Monica might be cooking.
Yeah.
So I don't know what I don't know what Xbox's plan is. When this Starfield game comes, what was it, Starfield or whatever,
Starfield, yeah.
I suppose they'll hope that might be their saving grace, but Bethesda haven't made anything good since Skyrim. Let's be honest. So,
I think we'll have to end it there.
For another topic for another podcast. And on that note,
might be their saving grace. That's what they're hoping. This Starfield is going to save Xbox, possibly.
But even then, they basically just bought it, didn't they? They just bought the game.
No, that's true. That's true. It's going to come out anyway. And it's probably going to come out to both consoles. But Xbox are like, no, we're not giving that to PlayStation. So
yeah,
it is what it is. But I can promise you now, we'll be having the exact same conversation when Nick plays Resident Evil 4 for the first time, Ted. They'll have to be. We need to fucking talk about this shit. I'm calling it right now.
I think, Nick, just saying, I think you need to play the original Resident Evil 4, the PlayStation 2 version, or whatever, the 2005 version, and then play the remake, because you'll appreciate the remake more when you play the original, I think.
Or just sit through a 7-hour YouTube gameplay of the whole thing.
I don't know if I can bring myself to do that. I haven't got enough time on my hands for that.
Or even look up scenes. Look up all cut scenes or something.
Do you mean from a story perspective, Ted, or a gameplay?
Both
gameplay.
Both, really, because when I played the remake, I appreciated the subtle differences they made to certain points in the game where I expected something to happen which didn't, and they changed it, or they changed a certain level, or they changed a certain path, and I just thought, oh, that's so much better. Oh, that's so much smoother. Oh, that makes sense. Oh, that's cool. So throughout the whole game, I was just like geeking out over all the little differences that I was noticing, which you wouldn't appreciate, of course, if you hadn't played the original. So,
True.
but saying that, because me and Elle have played the original, it'd be interesting, because you and Foley haven't, to understand how you enjoyed the game and appreciated the game compared to someone who played the original, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, totally. Well, like God of War 2018 leave a lot of questions. We'll just leave that Resident Evil 4 question-based pot right there for next time, maybe, if we do another one. Cheers, guys, for the time. I think we'll go to sleep now. It's a bit late. So, yeah. Till next amazing game, probably Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth. Isn't that right, Foley? I think that's what we're most excited for.
I'm done with that, dude. I can't do that.
Oh,
I can't.
Disappointing. All right, guys.